Welcome back, everyone, here to the SWC Group Qualifiers. We've gotten a couple steps closer in each of our brackets. We still have a couple steps to go before we know where these best of fives are going, who's going to be in Elim matches at score, and it's Frog who's going to be joining me on the desk for this one. And this one is one I think that is very exciting for a multitude of reasons, and a lot of it is just because the way things are going between these two teams. We'll break into them in just a little bit. For now, especially for those of you who are watching around at home and maybe a little confused, especially if you didn't watch the SCCs, how this is all going to work out. Well, good news. We've got some simple explanations for you. So 8 teams come in. 4 of them are going to qualify to Worlds. So we split them into 2 groups. Each group is going to give us, as you could guess it, maybe 2 teams to make up the 4 that are going to Worlds. We've got 2 from the NASCC, 2 from Europe, and of course 4 of our SPL teams who did not qualify from the playoffs in November. The SCC teams qualified here in December, and now they're trying to push themselves even further. Double elimination, best of 3 starting matches. The World's qualifier matches are going to be best of 5s. And so today, tomorrow, it's 3 best of 3s each. Today is the first matchup for a lot of these teams. Tomorrow starts with a first matchup and then some elimination games. And then, of course, Saturday and Sunday will be our qualifiers for the World Championship. Then, at the end of the event, the top 4 SPL team captains are going to come in here, and they're going to choose, based on the 4 that qualify from this event, who their opponents are. First seed is going to get first pick. Second seed gets to choose from the remaining 3, so on and so forth, until we have our 8 teams and full bracket for the World Championship, which I'm just now, it's just kind of solidified to me, is starting a week from tomorrow. Like,
yep.
This time next week, we at least, in this building, are going to be in Arlington, Texas, at the esports arena, setting things up for the World Championship. And that
8 days.
I don't know. I've got a little bit of nerves
now
that I've realized
it's
that.
Close. It's close, man. It's right around the corner.
And you know what? That's fun. That's exciting. And I am, ready to look at Group B brackets so we can start moving forward with who's gonna make it there. So earlier we watched, and by earlier I mean just now, watched the Scarabs. Surprise, surprise, they topple the Kings and put themselves again into a best of 5 matchup. That's what match 8 and match 10 are going to be. And in a spot where they could advance to SWC the next time we see them play. And for the Kings down there in match 6, they could very well get eliminated depending on the first matchup tomorrow, which is going to be Hounds and Wardens. One of those teams, loser, will be playing the Kings. Winner will be playing the Scarabs. So one gets, shot at glory up against the Scarabs, and again, whoever loses that one has a second chance because of the double elim nature. Kings have to play pristine. But if we go back to Group A, which is where we're about to be, Ravens, maybe unsurprisingly, but closer than maybe some would think, were able to take down the Storm. They're going to be waiting for the winner of this next set. Storm are going to be waiting for the loser, and we're going to be watching the Gilded Gladiators take on Hex Mambo. Now, Frog, this is one that again gets really, really interesting to me because this is one that, very similar to, I want to say, in years past, especially last year after we saw what Hex Mambo was able to do, this year entirely what we've seen Hex Mambo able to do and where the Gladiators have been, that it's not a guaranteed, oh, hey, the SPL is just going to knock out the SCC. This very well could be the Hex Mambo show.
It's far from a guarantee. In fact, it might be favored the other way.
Yeah.
It might legitimately be the SCC squad that's favored a little bit over the SPL quad, especially because of the surprise that we just had. We just had an SCC team take down an SPL team. That was unexpected. I was thinking if it was going to happen once, it might be this matchup that we're about to watch. But now that we've already seen it, I mean, that bodes even better because the team that we just watched take down the Kings, Hex Mambo have been putting them in the dirt time and time again.
Yeah, that's what makes it really scary, especially if you're the Glads here. The good news is Chxnnahh, for the first time, I believe, this year, right, since the last World Championship, back on land. So that's got to feel nice for them immediately, is having the full team for the first time all in the booth. And really, the biggest thing for me is kind of wondering what this team has been doing, because it has been a while since we've gotten to see them. Unable to qualify for the playoffs, so we haven't seen them since the end of the phase. Kyrmi has always been a huge player for this, but I think Jangaru as well has been in that conversation. We actually saw it in the video just now as one of the players that has maybe helped kind of breathe new air into this team towards the end of the year. And so with 2 months to kind of sit in the hyperbolic time chamber, I'm really curious what this team is going to look like as they break into this set and this event.
Right. I mean, you got to imagine they have been cooking, man. They've been in the kitchen for, like, no matter what. The last 2 months, they didn't get a chance to come to the qualifiers in November. They got to watch the SCC teams play in December. They've gotten to scrim on the new meta. The patch has been out for a little bit. They've even gotten a chance to watch our 2 matchups to start today. They've got 4 games of experience of watching this meta ahead of the other teams that have played. Of course, Hex Mambo have that as well. But you got to think that they've been in the kitchen. They've been cooking something up, and the question is, how good is the dish? You know what I mean? Like, what flavor did they go for? Did they go for something like Chinese food? They go for a different flavor. Maybe they like the mages in the solo lane still. I'm looking for some spice, because Jangaru, when he came into the mid lane with this team, you're right. He breathed some new fresh life into it. Absolutely. But I think he even brought more spice than we were expecting. You saw in that clip, he was playing Daji mid as we were ending out the
this
SPL
one's
season.
playing Jingwei mid.
Right? He's playing Jingwei mid, right? So, like, if there's any team that's going to come out the gate here and bring some spice, especially up against Hex Mambo, but they're coming back to land too. They've had longer than a lot of these other teams to cook up something. I'm excited for what they're going to bring to the table.
I'm going to be honest, since you said it, I've been racking my brain over what kind of dish you could cook for 2 months. And the only thing, like, there's like that, like a forever stew or something that someone's been making where it's like the same pot, like they've never really swapped anything out. They just like keep cooking it. And that's the only thing I can think.
I think of alcohol, because like you put it in a barrel and I mean, maybe they're just drunk, man.
Hopefully not. Hopefully they're focused up as they jump into this one. We've got Kyrmi standing by for an interview to get a vibe check on the Glads.
All right, Jim, I got Kyrmi, jungler for the Gladiators, standing by with me. Kyrmi, first off, it's been a while since we've seen you. How's the team just kind of feeling coming into this event, man?
Feeling pretty good. Very confident we're going to qualify. Very confident we're going to win this set. Overall, I'm just here to have fun and make this really enjoyable.
Have fun, maybe qualify to Worlds as well. Let's talk about Connor for a moment. First time that he's been able to join your team here on the LAN. How's it feel now having your solo laner and the whole team finally around you here in the building?
So I really wish, because there's only been 2 times this entire year that I've actually had all 6 people in the building. When I qualified for SPL and when we played Mambo at Masters. However, like Jake got COVID, which was really unlucky, so he's playing from home. But having Connor here is really nice. He's finally going to be unleashed from the ping. He's absolutely going to solo Julio and cooldown. Like, I have a complete faith in him. He soloed Sot and scrims like it's over.
Oh, I'm excited to see what happens over into the solo lane. Let's also talk about your team versus Hex Mambo here. Hex Mambo kind of seen as maybe one of the fan favorites, maybe a bit of an underdog story coming now from your team. How does it feel knowing that maybe some of the fans are kind of against you a bit, but now want to try and make your big run to the World Championships?
I love it. I am always a fan of being the underdog. So if people think I'm going to lose, it always, taking that pressure off always feels nice. But even if people expect me to win, I still expect to win.
Well, Kyrmi, excited to see what your team can do. Best of luck in your matchup. I'll let you get back with the team, and we'll throw it back to the desk.
That's the thing that you really like to hear, especially, whether you consider the Glads the underdog or the overdog. Is that the opposite of an underdog?
I like overdog.
Yeah, sure, if they're the overdog. I like to hear that there's a lot of confidence, and to the fact that even speaking to Kana's strength, right?
Oh, yeah.
And being able to say, like, hey, you know what? Like, we're going to be able to find and trust this solo lane. Like, it's going to be solid. But that is where some of the issues have shown up for them constantly throughout the year. And if we look towards Hex Mambo, it's not necessarily an easy matchup because it's Julio who's over there. And for those of you, again, for brief stints in the SPL, Julio was there for, like a month, I believe, for the Leviathans. Was one of their first pick choices, I think, going into Season 9.
I think so.
If not, Season 8. But it was there for just a little bit.
Right.
He was here, he was playing on LAN. Got hit with a ban and took him a little while, comes back. He's still rocking in the SCC, and he's still been really solid. And not only just him, but you've got some really solid names just across Europe here. So Davies standing behind him as the coach, but you got Spudio, you got Cozy, you got Rapio, but of course it'd be impossible not to talk about the fact that Johnny is here and on LAN. Johnny, who on LAN has been the maybe biggest menace to SPL teams anytime he's shown up.
The pentakill percentage rate at like Masters and events like these is higher than normal, specifically because Johnny shows up on LAN. Like, if Johnny wasn't flying in for the events, I'd like to think that the pentakill rate would go down a little bit over what we've seen in the past. But
maybe just be 0.
Yeah, because he comes out and he completely dominates some of these games. He had a stint in the SPL as well, of course. He is absolutely at this level of play and has proven so time and time again. And this season in particular, he has been playing a little bit of a different style. Typically, we've seen him on, you know, the Ao Kuang, the Kali, the late game hyper carries, but more and more recently, he has been more playing around the team. He goes for this Awilix has been a popular pick that he's liked, where Julio makes a lot of space for him. He allows room for Rapio, traditionally a jungler, right? It is easy to play mid when you have Johnny and Julio and everybody around you making space for you, man. Like that's if you want an environment to learn how to play comp mid in, dude, stick him in the team of the rest of the top EU players. And all of a sudden, you're going to get a Rapio that puts out damage. And so he is surrounded by teammates that can consistently have those follow-up plays, and he's continuing to put on a show through the season. I'm excited to see him here on LAN.
Yeah, that's actually I'm just Julio Johnny as a combo, seeing what this dueling's going to do. Yeah. But I will give credit, much like you had just said, Rapio during the SCC event. I was thinking, like, okay, yeah, it's Hex Mambo. Like, it's Johnny's just going to carry him, and, like, we'll see, you know, Julio's going to create some good space, and, like, Spudio and Rapio are just going to be, like, the last hitters. And then both of them not only stand up, but, like, had phenomenal games.
Yeah.
Sometimes when Johnny wasn't having a great game, you would still get a fantastic mid or carry performance that would help balance that out. So, in what I thought was going to be a very much jungle-centric team and show, we got to see that they do have, as you had mentioned, like all 5 members kind of ready to fire, and something that makes this even more exciting to see what they're going to be able to do, right? Because having, you know, Snoopy back in carry, now that he's had a few more months to be able to sit on that, as opposed to just the early swap when Jangaru joins, seeing what Jangaru, who has been an incredibly strong mid laner in the SPL, is going to be able to do against someone like Rapio, who recently has made that swap, right? Former jungler.
Right.
Especially when it feels like we're still talking a lot about these mages in mid, right? Maybe, you know, so far today, solo hasn't seen him as often, but mid, you know, we've still got our cool Khans, we've had Thos, we've had those mages that were very prominent in Europe that Rapio looked really good on, and it feels like that's going to be a pretty high point of contention between these two teams.
Yeah, and I mean, both of these mid laners have had picks they like to go back to, already seen in the meta today. We've seen Jangaru on the Baba Yaga time and time again, has gone back to that pick. Rapio looked fantastic on the Thoth when he was playing it during the EU SEC qualifiers. Both picks that have been played to pretty good success today, I would say, right? And so I would say the meta, while it has room for both of these players, another interesting point, which you touched on, right? They do both come from the jungle. Jangaru was playing jungler just earlier this year down in the SCC.
His name as well is like meant to literally translate as jungle.
Right, he is a jungler at heart, I believe. And Rapio, of course, been playing jungler for the entirety of his career up until the switch this season. In fact, I think he was done. He had retired for a portion of time, and then they were like, hey, do you want to come play mid? And he was like, sure. And he's looked fantastic. But you got to think that they've got similar mindsets when considering how they want to play in the mid lane. And not only could that come through in the picks, I mean, I'd love to get some spice. We see assassins in the mid lane and get some action there. But also just coming to mind in terms of positioning, rotating a little bit more. They want to fight a little bit earlier, right? And so I think trying to play the game a little bit faster, contrary to the last set where we saw like the first 15 minutes of the game, no Gold Furies, I think this set is going to be a lot faster paced.
It really does have a pivot point, right? Where it's Kyrmi and Johnny, I think, are going to be some pace setters. Depending on their picks, it could speed up or slow down, right? But I could see, you know, a seal being broken and then all hell breaks loose after that. Yeah. And it really just does depend on which team, I guess, is either overextending, underextending, depending on where things are on the map. So it's going to be fun to watch how they shake out. The Gladiators, Hex Mambo go on to the battlegrounds. We'll see where it starts out here as we jump into picks and bans for game number 1. Gladiators are going to be first pick. They're the top seed coming into this. And this is another thing that I'm really interested in, is watching these top bans, because it feels like things have shifted ever so slightly, right? There was a pretty decently sized patch from the last time we watched the SEC qualifiers to where we are now. So looking at, Warriors as we've seen today, a little bit more on the rise. Mages and solos, specifically your Raijins, your Morrigan Le Fays have kind of disappeared. Chernobog was surprisingly missing from the first set, but then present in the second set. So where he ends up, admittedly, he didn't necessarily look too great, but he didn't necessarily look terrible either. All of that's on the line so far. Baba Yaga, Thoth, Hachiman banned out by the Gladiators. Athena, the Aphrodite, and the Mammon Brigette gets banned out by Hex Mambo. So first pick over to the Gladiators. The Aphrodite, it feels like this has been something, if it wasn't Jake, I think I'd be like, what's going on here?
Right.
Why? But it's Jake, so I think I understand it a little more.
It's Jake, and it's been PBM, and it's been Quig, right? Like,
Yeah.
there have absolutely been... There's proof on the table at this point that it can be an effective pick. I'm still not sure I'm on board. I'm down to be an Aphrodite hater. It won't be seen in this game, though. Regardless, we'll see that Ratatoskr first pick, which I am a huge fan of. I thought it was going to be a Thor initially. We've seen a little bit more priority there on him this weekend, but this Ratatoskr brings a lot of the same things in terms of the semi-global pressure, the CC, the ability to burst someone down, and more importantly than that, it is Kyrmi's bread and butter. We've seen him go back to this pick time and time again, even before he was in the SPL, a very well-known Rat player. So I think getting him the pressure that he needs to try and run the map from the jungle in that first pick slot, definitely a good start there from the Gilded Gladiators.
And it really does feel like something Kyrmi specifically has done well on in the past, just to make sure things are balanced. And really, it is something that Johnny also looks really good on. So,
Yep.
it acts as a, hey, Kyrmi's great on it, Johnny's really good on it. It's a fourth ban while being a solid first pick. But as you had mentioned, it kind of leaves open that Thor in the conversation, something that you don't have to worry about as much unless you're getting something like a solo lane Rat or a solo Thor, which we haven't seen as often lately. But have seen a little bit. Sobek and Ishtar, though, if we're looking at away from the jungle and maybe towards the duo lane, that's a lot of pressure and a lot of kill potential, especially if Sobek's hitting his plucks.
Yeah, a lot of raw damage coming through from Ishtar, burst a little bit on that dash, but on the other side, you get this global pressure from Chernobog, which I was going to say, yes, we only saw him once. Notably, though, I can say this, it's in the stats, 100% loss rate this weekend. So, only seen him once, but he lost that game, so I don't know, man. Gilded Gladiators, they're trying to pull it back out, but this is what I was looking for. I feel like it was coming as soon as you picked that Sobek from Hex Mambo. You get 2 knockups coming from the Sobek, a third from the Awilix, the Ratatoskr, and the Chernobog. No jumps on the other side to really lean into that, but it felt like this was coming from Hex Mambo, which was with how often Johnny has gone back to it. And this top 3, you get that dual pressure, as you mentioned. You also are able to match that pressure in the jungle as well. Awilix and Ratatoskr both bring a lot of that early damage. So I think if you're Hex Mambo, and really if you're both these teams, I think you're pretty happy with this top 3.
Yeah, and you were even talking about the Awilix earlier during a lot of the highlights, right? Where it's just like you said, it's been something Johnny's gone back to and looked real good on every single time. They ban out the Morrigan Le Fay, and this is where I think it's going to be interesting to see how much homework they've done, because just like us, if you're only watching footage of the Gladiators, there hasn't been any for 2 months, right? We don't know, where Jangaru's at, and Morrigan Le Fay with a lot of those items and things that maybe were working well in the build kind of disappearing. Maybe she's not going to be there as much, but they're going to be the first team that pulls in the Raijin, who we thought was, or at least I thought was going to be gone. Whether that's mid or solo is TBD for Hex Mambo right now. They also banned out the Agni to try and control mid a little bit more. Gladiators on the other side, Tyr and the Tiamat get banned away, and trying to isolate maybe a little more variety, spice, as the Hex Mambo have brought in. Plus Tyr synergy, right, makes it a lot more difficult. How do you feel about Raijin right now, though? It feels like he's been not necessarily taken out, but we haven't seen him in 4 games, and probably for a reason.
Yeah, I'm not a huge fan of him. We did see him last game. Big Man Tings played him in the mid lane, but not to fantastic success. A lot of raw damage can come from this pick, but it's very, and it goes back even to the days when Twig was on the dragons, not the dragons now, but on Rival, and he was in the mid lane, and he was just dashing in on the Raijin, and you're like losing the safety, but you're gaining the damage, right?
Yeah.
So if you are trying to go for a bit of an all-in composition, I don't think this is a bad pick. And necessarily, Ishtar, Sobek wants to get in there first. He's in the front line, taking a little bit of that damage away. Ishtar has the ranged ability in the ultimate, right? In addition, you put a funnel, right? The Raijin ultimate and the Ishtar ultimate all go down the same funnel, all catch a bunch of the enemy team, and you have the potential to put together a really solid team fight. But at the same time, once again, you're sacrificing that safety, and with this semi-global pressure from the Rat, the full global from the Chernobog, the second full global now from the Morrigan transformation into the Chernobog or the Ratatoskr, you got to be careful wherever you are on the map if you're this Raijin.
Yeah, I'm a big fan of watching the Morrigan, and I think that this is going to be a game where if Jangaru has the kind of performance that we've seen set, especially around Worlds time on the Morrigan, it could be some trouble for Hex Mambo. Something to be worried about, and like you said, transformations are great for what you have on your own team. And then you get the Wukong alongside it, which this is probably digging deeper. Like, realistically, you're transforming into somebody who's going to have a huge setup ult or a huge global ult. But if you transform into, say, like an Awilix, if Johnny gets really well fed, you've got a Wukong that can Ox form knock up quite a few people for you. So there's definitely some combos for the Gladiators. We'll have to see, because Hex Mambo, yeah, have been kings of interesting in the past, and Spice, at least in Europe. And when we come to Europe, they are definitely far enough ahead that they can mess around a little bit. Gladiators may be a different caliber. They go for the Chaac, so I want to get a vibe check from you, how you feel about Chaac, especially going into like a Wukong.
I'm a bit of a Chaac hater,
Yeah.
but I also have seen more and more of him recently.
Yeah.
I've seen a lot of him in the jungle recently, just because he brings a lot of raw damage. This, of course, I think definitely going to the soul lane. And with the Warriors in the soul lane, when you're thinking about aggressive picks, I mean, how many times today have we seen Warriors Axe into Jotuns, right?
Mm-hmm.
Chaac was doing that before it was meta. Chaac was building trans in the soul lane before it was meta to build damage over there. And so if you're looking for somebody to have pressure over there, somebody to dominate the lane, maybe get off to a little bit of a lead, and a lane specifically that Johnny can play through, you've got pressure over in the soul lane, you've got the Chaac. We can't even forget about that dual lane, the kill lane with the Sobek. I mean, if your goal, we talked about this Hex Mambo squad as a cohesive unit, they have really tried to hand Johnny the tools here to get pressure in these lanes. Like, hey man, you can play really wherever you want. You can just go to a lane and we'll probably set something up for you.
Yeah, between what? Slows, knockups, taunts, stuns, and plucks.
There's a lot.
You kind of got it all covered if you're Hex Mambo. And like you said, you get to line things up pretty easily there for Johnny. So when I look at their team fight, like, and that's what I see really, is a really solid, hey, let's get together. You had mentioned, lane phase, let's try to get Johnny ahead. But also just, cool, we've grouped up and at least 3 of us are together. That should be a really good fight. I want to look at the Gladiators and see how you feel about that, because, we've seen Charon have some good games, have some not so good games. Wukong kind of in a similar boat.
Sure.
And it feels like with, Chernobog, you almost want to fight a little bit earlier. So are they trying to find those fights in those lanes, or do you think that Hex Mambo maybe stifles them a little too much?
I think that if you are the Gilded Gladiators, you want to find that success early, but I think it's tough, right? Because you don't have, I think, as easy to execute a composition as I would like. You think about compositions that you've got big mage circles, big Odin cages, big setup, big CC that's coming through, and in the Gilded Gladiators composition, it's all in pieces. All of these good pieces are there. I love the global pressure, but there's no standard mage follow-up. There's no traditional peel support, right? It's going to be a difficult to execute composition. That being said, if they're decisive, if they pull the trigger all at one given moment, you get a transformation across the map, you have the CC for the single target lockdown. Charon loves to start those fights. Jake loves to start those fights, right? So if they can get those critical moments in the early game, I think they can find success.
It's Hex Mambo and the Gilded Gladiators, one that's going to be close, and I can't wait to see the Twitch poll on this one, but to find out how it is, we'll go down to the casters.
That's right. It's game number 1 with the Gladiators and Hex Mambo, and it's J-Mac and Mifflin here to bring you the cast, and Doug, our spectator. here on the Battleground as we jump into game number 1 between SPL and SCC once more. And I think a matchup that everybody has been waiting for, myself included, just because of the history that Hex Mambo has in major events like this, especially against some of the lower-seeded SPL teams. We'll see if Hex Mambo can have a repeat performance, and a 63% favor from the Twitch poll in favor of the SCC team. Mifflin, what are your thoughts on the Hex Mambo comp just off the initial face value?
I mean, it's exactly what Hex Mambo have been playing up until this point. This is standardized compositions for both these teams, really. If you were to look at this Gilded Gladiators draft, you could tell me they played it in any given week of the SPL, and I'd believe you. You could say the same for Hex Mambo and the SEC on the other side. What I do see is a lot of Johnny potential. There's a lot of setup for Johnny already. Julio's ultimate's going to set up for the Gravity Surge. Tail Whip from Cozyx going to do the exact same. And Johnny has really been one to absolutely dominate games when he's been given this Awilix. So high potential for him to set the pace. The Gilded Gladiators, on the other hand, have got high potential in the late game. Any team composition that incorporates Chernobog, or 2 Chernobogs, as I'm expecting to see at least once or twice throughout this match, can separate the map, can control the macro, can control those neutrals. So I'm keeping my eyes on Hex Mambo early and Gilded Gladiators late.
Cozyx trying to steal purple, just a bit off the mark. Might lose his life for this one, slowed down by the Invader's Curse, but walking back in. Purple secured by the Gilded Gladiators, but Cozyx not going to give up. He's even going to force the Gladiators all the way back to the back of their Tier 1 tower. You're going to force a bit of missed gold on the side of the Gladiators now.
Not only forcing missed gold, but he watched those HP pots get ticked and said, you know, Sickening Strike actually has a little bit of anti-heal on it. You know that, actually. So it denies them a little bit of that healing, denies them some of that farm, and has really slowed down that duo. When you've got an aggressive support like Charon, you want to be allowed to leverage that early on. So anything that slows him down will be massive.
Johnny's stunned out, in danger under the tower. He gets back to safety, but Rapio steps in just to make sure that his jungler can get back out. And we've seen this a few times whenever these supports go with Charon, some of the lower clearing ADCs, is it takes them a while to get the first 2 buffs done. By the time they get to purple buff, usually the enemy's already halfway cleared on theirs or done with it. So we see these constant invades, like we're seeing Kyrmi now go over to solo. Julio might be fine, double stun his way, but that rain keeping him healed up. And the axe to turn around for some damage. Health bars falling low on the side of Hex Mambo. Gilded Gladiators making sure to keep up some strong pressure.
Yeah, Julio will be able to resustain pretty easily, though, just by nature of being Chaac. It's free abilities once he stacks up his passive. Few auto attacks means that heal always going to be available to him. So any damage dealt to Chaac likely will not stick. That rotation by Kyrmi just to guarantee the cooldown buff on the right-hand side. But similar rotation by Johnny to the left, make sure that Hex Mambo grabs the shield buff. And if we're evaluating value of lanes, especially throughout the early, pressure in duos just worth so much more. You're denying gold to tower against 2 enemy gods as opposed to 1, and the side of the map that has Gold Fury just has an earlier neutral objective to put pressure on.
Hex Mambo able to take away one of the bastions on the side of the Gilded Gladiators. A little bit extra gold for them, but just keeping them pushed up at that Tier 1 tower line. And almost makes you kind of wonder where the pressure then from Kyrmi goes. Did he just give up on the dual lane? We saw him already make a rotation to that right side to try and get some pressure up against Julio. We haven't seen Kyrmi poke his head around the dual lane, which is usually more often than not where Kyrmi likes to try and hang out. Help out Snoopy, help out Jake, allow that support to get out of lane a little bit sooner.
Yeah, but maybe you're just trying to make sure that Snoopy doesn't have too much of his farm soaked up. And Chernobog, although decent around level 4, level 3, once you have access to your full kit, not exactly the highest pressure pick. You're pretty concerned of Spudio's damage output on the Ishtar so early on. So I think rotations over towards solo makes some sense to me, as well as the fact that once Julio gets access to his ultimate, once he's got his first defensive item built up, your kill potential, your threat onto Chaac just goes absolutely to 0. Similarly to Sun Wukong, once you have Somersault Cloud, you're not really worried about anything coming your way either. So early rotation over towards Soul Name, just seeing if he can maybe catch Julio off guard a bit. Unfortunately for Kyrmi, he doesn't get the kill, but drops him to, what was it, about 40% HP when he was already retreating to his tower line. There's a very real possibility that that rotation could have paid off.
Just looking at builds so far for Julio specifically, because Chaac solo is always kind of that weird one. You don't know exactly what he's going. There was maybe some suggestion towards going Axe into Jotuns like we were seeing earlier on the day, but Julio instead going Bluestone, and then Tier 1 in the Emerald Tree. Which leads me to believe he might be going down the old kind of SOT style of mentality. Get that Gauntlet of Thieves early, get those stacks as quick as possible, but really means that Julio is just going to kind of be sitting around in this solo lane for such a long time.
Yeah, I mean, he doesn't have rotation advantage up against Sun Wukong. And he won't have boxing advantage either with this new Jotun's Wrath first item kind of wave that we've been seeing in the Soul Lane for Warriors. So going for a little bit of additional defense, and assuming he is getting Gauntlet of Thieves, it's likely that a lot of his waves will be pushed into tower. That's another way to make sure you're at least finding value in stacks if you're even losing out on gold. So I don't hate this pickup for him. Julio in the late game is just there to be disruption. He's not really there to do immense damage. It's just space control, throw down the first ability, summon up the storms, go for your AoE CC, and pray that the rest of your team's got the damage behind you. So this idea of I'll be the frontline tank, this now allows Cozyx to be a little bit more so peel-oriented in the 5-on-5. I kind of like how it plays for Hex Mambo in the late.
Cozyx trying to zone Jake away, misses the pluck, but Jake is pretty far out, maybe too far for Spudio. Try and chase him down. Johnny more interested in the shield buff, but he's used his Feather Step. Kyrmi trying to catch him out. Jake's going to try and do his best, but only gets the silence after, and the knockback pulls Jake back in, goes in for the ultimate, only able to hit 2, but it's immuned out by Spudio's ultimate. Cozyx gonna try to keep him in place, finds the pluck to throw Jake back in. His dash gets stopped, but there's just no follow-up damage this time, and now Jangaru on the way.
Does he want it?
The Gladiators might have a turnaround opportunity, but Cozyx not gonna dash any further forward. He's gonna sit back and allow this kill to fall by the wayside.
Both mid laners making the rotation there. If either one of these teams got confident on their chase, Rapio would have stopped him. And on the other side, Jangaru ready to prevent a jump over wall from Johnny. The only thing that would have got First Blood there for Hex Mambo is if Johnny decided to trade his life. And even First Blood slightly weighing it in favor of Hex Mambo. A support for jungle trade's not really one you ever want to make. So no surprise to me that that fight fizzles towards the end. But it was close, and the Feather Step usage to catch out the dash from Awesome Jake just shows that Johnny's playing heads up.
Now there is a bit of an interesting storyline for really both of these mid laners coming into this event. Rapio, former SCC jungler on the teams that he had been playing with before,
console.
now switched over to mid. Jangaru, former SCC jungler, now switching over to mid over the course of this year as well. So both these players not fully seasoned in the role that they're currently playing in, and now having to jump in with some of these more star-studded rosters alongside them. Kind of leaves up for a bit of a conversation as to, you know, which one can play their new role better out with their team. So far, I've been enjoying what we've been seeing out of Jangaru at the SPL level, for Rapio, for his SCC games that he's been playing, has been looking really strong. You almost wouldn't believe that either of these players haven't been playing mid for a while.
And they've looked very comfortable in role. Look at the build difference between these mid laners as well. Dumorb first slot for Jangaru. That's a lot of power immediately. He should be outscaling Rapio as of now until Rapio finishes stacking up that Book of Thoth. But it's also the penetration, the movement speed that should allow Jangaru to get involved in these side lanes. That tends to indicate to me, if you're going Dumorb first slot, that you don't necessarily really want to play on the center of the map, and that makes sense when you've got something like a Morrigan, essentially just a magical assassin, able to rotate through with that stealth, or even go up into the global if he decides to turn into Snoopy, and then join the fight. The Gilded Gladiators have a little bit more potential out of their mid laner as of now, but the 3-item power spike is really where Rapio is going to start pulling significantly ahead in damage output.
I do see a bit of scuffling between the solo laners now. Kana rotating out of lane, dashed by Kyrmi.
Good stun.
And a stun on Rapio from distance. Up into the sky goes Kyrmi. Jangaru's nearby, but it sends a dunk to Johnny. And caught out inside the jungle. It's first blood for Jangaru and the Gilded Gladiators. Well, what more can they go from here? With Cozyx rotating in, seems the Gladiators will call for the retreat, but a good pluck by Cozyx pulls the beads immediately away from Kyrmi.
Yeah, the CC chain between Kyrmi and Kana has been very good so far as well. They've just really caught out everyone on map. Jangaru
goes to the transformation, gets out just fine. Rapio living at a sliver of HP.
That's crazy.
Probably single-digit health at that point. Bluestone not quite enough to get the kill, but now it'll be Jangaru going down. Axis there. Torrent misses after stun on Julio, and he's just gonna fall after Johnny comes back from the grave to pick up one more, and Julio's still alive. Goes for the ultimate, takes down Kyrmi while still living at a couple hundred himself. Johnny standing by, waiting for Kana to land, but he'll bird form out. All the while, Rapio had never quite left, farms up the wave, and Cozyx will think twice about diving under the tier 1 tower. 2 kills for Hex Mambo.
Love the idea there from Cozyx to chase down that kill as well, though. Chases out the bird transformation, says, if you're near me at all, tail whip is a death sentence. Johnny had gravity surge available, no beads. Means Sun Wukong would have fallen down, but you gotta talk about the narrow margins that net Hex Mambo that win on the team fight. Julio lives with maybe 20 HP for far too long, baits forward the Gilded Gladiators, gets the ultimate back up just in time to turn that engagement on its head, and Hex Mambo, we're starting to look a bit rough there. Making the comeback. That first blood for the Gilded Gladiators already washed away.
Now we see a momentum shift back for Hex Mambo. Experience, dead even, gold, couple hundred between them at this point. Dead even as we start approaching that 10-minute mark for Hex Mambo. Forget Julio trying to get himself online. Taking a while to get those Thebe stacks. We see that out of the solo lane quite often. On the opposite end for stacks with Rapio going towards that Book of Thoth. You mentioned the power spike that Jangaru had immediately. Rapio is now on his way once he gets that book stacked up. A lot of extra power afforded to him through that item, and already starting to work towards his pen. Kyrmi a bit active on the left side, trying to go for shield buff. Cozyx gets the knockback onto Jake with Johnny nearby. It's an easy pull target if he connects even one extra ability.
Yeah, but even if the pull were there, likely would have only connected with Jake, who is the furthest forward on his team. So we saw last time around, wasn't quite able to knock down Jake, even with the help of Johnny. This time, a little bit tankier. So catch and release, I suppose, as he's starting to stack up the Prophetic Cloak on the support for the Gilded Gladiators. I'm really keeping my eyes on Julio's build. I thought we were looking at like first item Gauntlet, second item Oni, and then just like Prophetic, the OG SOT, I want full damage mitigation style build. Instead, it's like we might be seeing a Prophetic, or excuse me, a Vital Amplifier in that second slot. That would be crazy. It's a lot of damage, but it does open you up to some rotations.
Quick ult from Chaac gets him away from the potential pullback of Johnny, who is waiting the wings in the jungle, but you rotate the jungle to right, and they send 4 over to the Gold Fury. Gilded Gladiators gonna sneak an objective away from Hex Mambo. Everybody a little bit too late to spot out that potential on the Chaos team. Now Spudio taking a bit of bullying by Awesome Jake, but it's just Jake up here for now. Ultimate from Snoopy. He's gonna dive in, but dashed by Spudio right at the last second. Puts enough distance between the two hunters.
Purple buff spawning soon. I'm not certain the Gilded Gladiators have timer on this one. Snoopy's really low mana as well. He's got to be careful.
Rapio on the way. Pluck hits Jake. Mez not going to hit this time. Jake's still standing through, but he dashes the wrong way, and Spudio will capitalize off of it. Kyrmi gets his dash interrupted. Snoopy now no mana and slowed down by the lurking in the water. Snoopy's going to have to give up his life, and the kill goes to Rapio. Another beads pulled away from Kyrmi as Cozyx connects with yet another pluck.
Gilded Gladiators are starting to beat themselves a little bit on these rotations. The fight on right was an engagement the Gilded Gladiators had chose. The fight there on enemy purple buff, another one, where the Gilded Gladiators are just getting over-aggressive. Snoopy does not have the mana to take that engagement. Even with Kyrmi nearby, finds the dunk in the back, but Taiko Drums is already channeled by Rapio, who just uses the fear to knock Kyrmi into the wall. That was an ill-thought-out engagement from the Gladiators, but still benefiting from a pretty significant lead in spite of the massive deficit in kills. Experience a little bit more meaningful at this portion of the game than gold, especially considering how small the gold lead is. But it's worth noting that they've got one regardless. I mean, it's surprising to me. So much of it has to be coming from just forcing these waves into towers.
Spudio may be aware of the two enemies sitting inside of his lane, as the beacon has spawned up, and it's Hex Mambo first on the platform. They'll likely be the ones to catch this very first beacon, while Spudio has to sit back under Tier 1 tower. A spot where he kept the enemy team almost the entire early game, but will now just have to let this one go so his team can get beacon. With Johnny nearby, action potential could kick off, but Rapio now no beads. Good pull from those by Kyrmi on the Ratatoskr. Still 90 seconds till Kyrmi even has his beads back up. Doesn't want anything to do with being anywhere near the crocodile.
Rapio showing a lot of respect there. That was actually pre-beads for a stun that had whiffed, so unfortunate for Rapio in that it probably wasn't necessary, but good reaction time nonetheless. It's not often the Kyrmi is going to miss those acorn blasts. Keep my eyes on Jake. If they keep playing aggressive here, the Gilded Gladiators that is, they're going to have a numbers disadvantage and a significant one. Johnny and Rapio on the rotation.
Fight over shield, pull back onto Jake. Grabs him with the gravity surge, and knockback is there. The feather step pulls him out of it, and it's another kill for Johnny. A dunk in, this time by Kyrmi. Takes down 2 almost. Johnny's able to jump away, and Cozyx with a tail whip to zone him out, but Spudio crashes in with the ultimate. Spudio himself trying to get out of this one as Jangaru catches him out in the back line. Nearly takes him down, and Cozyx goes down with a rotation from Chaac. Able to pick off Spudio. 2 kills for the Gilded Gladiators, just one for Hex Mambo.
Great rotation from Cxnnahh there. Gets involved, cuts off the escape path. Jangaru also rotates in high, and Hex Mambo nowhere to go after the fight. Dzoni at least able to disengage himself. Julio did not have access to teleport at the time, so gets it back up during the engagement, but too late to get involved. Instead, tries his best to strip as much farm as possible. That's going to hurt Cxnnahh a bit on that rotation, even with the kill going to him. Should be the Julio coming out ahead, having forced a wave in a tower and stealing the blue buff. But it's the Gilded Gladiators once more, keeping their heads above water and even extending their gold lead.
Over towards Fire Giant might be a bit much for the Gilded Gladiators this early in the game, but trying to show some presence around objective at the very least. Because Pyromancer is up and it is an option, with Cozyx standing by consistently. As long as Dzoni is within the vicinity, there's always that threat on beads. Kyrmi does have his back up, but it's 90 seconds for Snoopy and 40 seconds for Jake. Until he gets his back up now. I gotta wonder, the target was onto Jake over at that last little fight, using a lot of ultimates, a lot of abilities to kill him. Wonder how much distance a Spirit Robe might get him late game if he's gonna be the consistent target of the Hex Mambo.
It could help out a bit, and it does fit Jake's playstyle. Loves stacking up that CDR as quickly as possible. But the target's going to swap pretty soon. Next defense item for Jake, and he's feeling pretty comfortable, even if he is the recipient of the damage. So maybe not necessary to go in towards that Spirit Robe. Would likely decide to pick up an Aura defense item or something that helps out the rest of his team first.
Ultimates traded by the solo laners. Not a whole lot of action happening really across the map with Fury back up, Pyro up, I should say. Means there's potential fight around either objective to go towards, but Hex Mambo, a bit more grouped over towards the right side. No Hunter for either team, but Snoopy on the Chernobog could join the fight at a moment's notice, utilizing that Living Nightmare ultimate. Could just be a fight breakout in mid, 3 versus 3, but both teams playing very cautiously. Cozyx does hit the tail whip. Dzoni not going to pull the trigger on the ultimate this time. Bit too much open land for the teams to play in this time, and quick ways for Jake to be able to escape.
And now if you take a fight in mid or on right, you have to be wary of the rotation from Snoopy. Snoopy up until this point probably wasn't exactly thrilled at the idea of leaving his lane and missing out on farm, but now having a significant lead, he can leave whenever he wants.
Pyro started, Pyro dropped by the Gladiators. Julio nearby. Snoopy dives into the lane, but is met by a whole heap of damage. Beads pulled away from the Hunter inside the wall, just waiting to see who his death goes to. It's Rapio with Taiko Trumps. Ultimate from Julio catches a few. Jangaru knocked up and pulls the beads, so Dzoni can't yank him back, and now it's ultimate from Jake. Hits a few big targets, but now it's just pulling them all towards the Gilded Gladiators, and all this while, Spudio has not left that lane. The only low health bar on Hex Mambo was the support Cozyx.
Psychotic play from Snoopy there. Just ult in the mid alone. He's got vision on the entirety of Hex Mambo when he's in the air. Here's the thing about Living Nightmare. It's like the best ability in Smite. It's a global teleport, it gives you a stim, and you get full vision on map. He knew that was an insane landing. He knows where his allies are. I can't believe he decides to pull the trigger there. Hex Mambo were just waiting for a mistake, and they were handed one.
Kyrmi might try and steal this Fury away. 1 versus 4, blinks in, finds Spudio, but gets hit by a lot of CC. Beads and ultimate now used.
Close.
Gets to the sky in time, and the Fury has been stopped. But now picked back up by the Gilded Gladiators. Jangaru and Jake holding on to this one. Now Hex Mambo got to try and take it back from them, but it gets reset once more. Gladiators with low health bars, Jake and Kyrmi a bit worse for wear. The Gladiators stop the momentum of the Hex Mambo and prevent the Fury from going down.
Hero play from Kyrmi there to prevent that Gold Fury. Another repull attempt, good from Jake, but takes too much damage too quickly. Forced to reset once Rapio spots it out. Good rotation back and heads up play from the Raijin to make sure that Gold Fury doesn't go down for free. Both these teams, they're very evenly matched in these engagements. It seems to me whichever one makes the mistake first, likely the one to lose, because the punish game's been great on both sides. That said, Hex Mambo have entirely closed the lead that the Gilded Gladiators have been benefiting from for this whole match. 18 minutes, the Gilded Gladiators have been up 500-600 gold, pushing it to that 2,000 mark. For the first time, it feels like, since we've loaded in, Hex Mambo fighting on even footing.
I was wondering for a moment why the heavy investment in anti-heal on the side of Gilded Gladiators. 2 different forms of just an itemization. Then I look over across the board. Not a whole lot of healing. Julio his own self, but has gone for a double meditation for Hex Mambo, 1 for both of the frontliners. Cozyx unfortunately catches the decoy of Jangaru, costs him a lot of his HP, might even cost him his full life. Jake goes in with the ultimate. It's going to pull only Rapio this time because Dzoni flips over it, but Kana up on the cloud is distracting as Julio's in the back line, trying to distract Jangaru, who goes up into a cloud of his own as the Wukong double dive in by the solo and the jungle, but the Taiko drums are wreaking havoc on the health bars of the Gilded Gladiators. Stun catches Snoopy from Spudio's ultimate. Now Snoopy is in trouble. Jump in by Johnny, puts him on a killing spree. Hex Mambo win out the team fight.
I can't believe Julio's teleport made it through, J-Mac. That is ridiculous. Throughout the entire fight, no one from the Gilded Gladiators spots that ward. Julio shows up in the backline and says, guess I'm going straight in the ult.
Cozyx trying to front line, but he's losing a lot of health. Fury gets reset for a moment. Now Kyrmi is by himself, but the ultimate is still there for Johnny, and he picks him off. It's a killing spree now for Rapio. The Hex Mambo with their 8th of the game and an Oni Fury to boot. The 1K lead that the Gilded Gladiators had has now swung 1,400 the other way.
Means a little bit less of that 20-minute mark. I would still call this an even game. If the Hex Mambo can grab that tier 1 tower just to open the map, that'd be so significant looking at the Pyromancer or the Fire Giant going forward. Instead, though, with Awesome Jake nearby, gonna reset themselves. What a split engagement. The Gilded Gladiators were fighting evenly the entire time, and then one person just doesn't get the memo. Everybody goes left, everybody zigged, Snoopy zagged, and leaves himself isolated, jumped on by Johnny. If Awilix is allowed to channel the leap aggressively for damage, you know that target is out of position. Snoopy needs to stay with the rest of his team. Just gets punished immediately. Hex Mambo, that's always been their MO. One mistake, massive punish.
I mean, the fact that entire fight that had broke out preemptively and Johnny never used ultimate, it was able to save it for the secondary fight after. Just goes to show the level of confidence Hex Mambo had in themselves, and then being able to catch out Snoopy by himself. It's now Hex Mambo who have control, walked up to the mid-tier 1 tower, but not going to put any real threat on it just yet. Also, while we panned over there for a moment, Rapio had stolen away the green buff all the way at the back of the tier 1 tower. I think Raijin had made a bounce over towards that minion and stole it away from Jake. So now Hex Mambo, what will they do with their lead? What will they do with this pressure they've developed? Cozyx on a warpath. Anytime he sees an enemy, walk in, pluck, see what we can do from it. To pull back to Jake. He's using a lot of HP. Johnny and Rapio just have so much damage. Now Aegis pulled away from Jangaru, does have his beads, so not gonna have to worry about CC, but being down in Aegis against that much damage, we saw what it did to Jake. Jangaru might as well just be dead if he ever gets pulled back.
Yo, my bad, J-Mag. You called for Spirit Robe. I don't know ball. He needs Spirit Robe if he's going to be getting hit like that. Damage output from Hex Mambo, just ridiculous, and the pick timing nets them a Pyromancer for free. Fortunate defense from the Gilded Gladiators does maintain that tier 1 mid tower, but that gold means less and less as the game goes on. It's just about positioning and opening up the map. You don't exactly need to do it if you're grabbing the neutral objectives anyway. Gilded Gladiators, though, this is the point in the game where their composition does begin to thrive. We've seen it already. Snoopy threatening the tier 2 tower on left, forces the teleport from Julio. That's going to be something that the Hex Mambo are going to have to figure out how they're going to deal with going forward. I think having Julio on the left side of the map, just have him be there and then utilize the teleport to join the engagement might be one of the better answers. But considering how integral Julio was to the team fight around Gold Fury, if he's not there, if he doesn't hit the 3-man silence, if he doesn't force Snoopy to dash into a wall, that fight would have gone cleanly to the Gilded Gladiators. Having him be the dedicated one to stop Snoopy is a little bit scary to me.
Well, no push towards objectives yet. Pyromancer is down. Now unsecured by Hex Mambo. They've gotten both of them so far this game. Fury's still down for about another minute. Fire Giant being pinged by the Gilded Gladiator. Snoopy ults over towards Cozyx, so now Hex Mambo know that no ultimate on the board for the Hunter, and the Gladiators are starting up the Fire Giant. Cozyx in the middle of the pit, trying to zone away 3. Kyrmi goes up onto the tree, and it's instead to the backline, trying to take down Spudio, who uses the ultimate, pulls it back, but doesn't stun anybody, dashes into a wall, and Rapio's there to try and bail him out. Spudio is still alive throughout all of this, but Jake's ultimate, finally the one to take him down. Kana still trying to fight back, but Rapio knocks him away, and now it's Jake on the run. Ultimate from Julio, gets the knockup. Jake used the beat, so he's not pulled back by Johnny this time, but he still gets hit by the knockup. And it's Rapio dashing right in aggressively. Jake goes down, double for the mid laner of Mambo.
That's the fight for the Gilded Gladiators that they were praying for. 5 versus 4 with Johnny on the way back to base. Johnny only involved for the last 5 seconds of that engagement, but still it's Hex Mambo coming out on top once more. The damage output from the Gilded Gladiators just isn't there. It's a very pick-based composition. They can isolate individuals, but Jangaru's not a standard mage, and he might just be dead.
Not just a might, it is a definite dead for him. Rampage now for Johnny. 5-1-4. for the Awilix jungle of Hex Mambo. And he was doing this during the SCC qualifiers. There was comps where he would run no knockups on his team, and he's just doing all himself. Doesn't care about the ultimate. But just look at the way he's just building. It's the, I'm going to dive in, all my abilities are on cooldown, here's that one auto, and they just die.
Yeah, double lifesteal as well with the Awilix passive means first auto attack just healing you a ridiculous amount. If you get your 1-kill reset, Bloodforge passive, going to make sure you get out of there. With the help of Suku, it's a very difficult to deal with playstyle, and that's talking about it without other knockups on the team. He's got other knockups. Julio can set up, Cozyx can set up, and they've been playing around it so well just to threaten the tanks of the Gilded Gladiators. We've seen pulls on Kana, we've seen pulls on Jake, and they've both gone rewarded.
Fire Giant started by Hex Mambo. Kana spots it out and thinks twice about even trying to step towards the pit. So, first major objective now for Hex Mambo on the right side in that fire. It'll be traded by a Gold Fury for Gilded Gladiators. But Hex Mambo already starting their group up. The Titans are pushing up mid lane now. And a tier 1 tower answered back for Hex Mambo. Gilded Gladiators have a pretty significant grouping over on the left side. 2 players having to go back to base. Snoopy does have ultimate, but the last couple ults by Snoopy have not put him in very favorable position, so might have to think twice about diving in. Or if Johnny can spot him out, I think Johnny just missed the memo as to exactly where Snoopy was. Now going to go back real quick. Can he catch him before the back goes through? Snoopy does manage to make it back, but it's the rest of Hex Mambo already pushing up mid. Kyrmi pushed away. Jake goes in with the ultimate. Does manage to get the ultimate out of Rapio in response. Kyrmi dives down in to try and take down Rapio, but he's just so tanky. The shells, the meditations, they're keeping him alive. Rapio just will not die. Finally goes down to awesome Jake, but it's already down to now a 4v4. Solo laner gone for the Gilded Gladiators, and Jake all by himself. It might be a 2-for-1 as Jake gets caught out. Johnny's swinging away, and Spudio at the in-hands takes him out.
The Gilded Gladiators have fallen prey to it twice now. They say, okay, look, Johnny's not here. He was trying to stop Snoopy. Force the fight in mid now. We got Snoopy teleporting in. It's not an issue. But just because there is an opportunity for a 5v4 doesn't mean it is always the best to just force it immediately. Jumping into that backline, Rapio is already channeling Taiko Drum, so Kyrmi lands with ultimate and it's shoved into a wall. You're not getting a whole lot done on the rat there, forced to disengage at fear of death, and all of a sudden the rest of Hex Mambo are free casting.
Right side Phoenix to Hex Mambo. Mid Phoenix open, but no minions there. Might make it a bit tougher for Hex Mambo. And look at all the tools that were used to keep Rapio alive in there. Synced meditations,
Shells.
a shell used as well. So many cooldowns and relics to keep him up. His own bead still didn't have his Aegis, I believe, for that fight, so couldn't use it there. But if he had that, if he had the timeline proc ready to go as well, that might have just been a full turnaround and could have even been maybe a turnaround to win the game for Mambo.
And talk about the confidence from Rapio too. He had the opportunity to just leap out. He didn't need to stick in for the fight, but says, I win the DPS trade. Kana is squishy to me. And does upwards of 40% of his HP, which is a 2-1 combo. Great stuff from Rapio to turn that engagement, realizing I might die, but if I take out Kana, they've got no peel potential. Jake's out of position. The chase is going to follow with us, and we'll win out from there. So great stuff to the mid laner of Hex Mambo. New mid laner, I should say. Used to be a jungler, but that's where all the best players come from.
That's where they put Jangaru from jungle into mid now. So far, the performance out of Rapio, just the confidence that the rest of his team, it feels like having this squad around Rapio has given him that extra boost jumping into the mid lane, because coming from the jungle, he kind of knows how the map operates, how the teams want to play things out, but jumping into an unfamiliar role, but with players of this caliber around him, gives him that second wave of confidence to maybe make those kinds of plays, to sit in the back, say, I know my support's got this, I know my solo laner has an extra relic to help me out, stands his ground, trades out one. Tier 2 tower on left for Tier 2 on right. Snoopy gonna go for a split push.
Won't get it.
But Johnny's on the hunt. Snoopy might want to run away fast. Goes up with the ultimate, but where does he land? You go to the group of 3. It seems to be the call. Immediately, Spudio answers with an ultimate of his own. Jake gets stunned out. Kyrmi off the tree, on top of Cozyx, but that's not the target that he really wants to go for. Kana tries to get to the back line, doesn't do damage. Jangaru finds a double stun, but he can't even get a good transform back off. Spudio falls down. Health bar's a bit low on the side of the Gladiators, and it's going to be the call for retreat because Julio is in the back line. It's just going menace mode up against Snoopy. He can't even do damage to Julio. Julio's returning it all back to him, and it's a kill for Julio, maybe an extra for Johnny. Has the jump, lands on Kyrmi, feather step, takes him down, and now it's only 3 alive on the Gladiators.
Jangaru's struggling to escape out of the jungle. Johnny's got eyes on him. But maybe it's Kana on the chopping block. Either one would be massive. Kana pulled back in, and Johnny picks up his second. Chase doesn't stop. Can you take down a bird from this position? Jangaru still hasn't reset.
2 versus 4. Can the Gilded Gladiators hold back? Awesome Jake standing behind. Left side Phoenix gets hit by a runic bomb, slowed down. Its attack speed and ill of its HP gone. Can the 4 fight 2 under the Titan? Jangaru steps up. That's the last step that he gets to take. Now it's Jake versus 4. Hex Mambo walk right into the throne room, and they don't care about what this Charon can do. The Titan down to half, nobody back on respawn. Jake thrown around like a rag doll at the hands of Hex Mambo, who take game number 1.
I don't even think Mambo wanted to end, J-Mac. They were walking towards mid. They just spot Jangaru staring down the barrel of 4 people. Why is he that far up? Immediate turn and burn into, oh, okay, well, it's just Jake now. A simple end. Hex Mambo, they may have struggled throughout the early, but the second they got their grasp on that game, the second the gold lead extended to 500 in their favor, I mean, they never looked back.
It never feels good having to ban something super far out of the meta, but I think after enough performances by Johnny, after we've seen what other SPL players can do, Awilix has got to go. Johnny is just so good on this pick, and most of the junglers who have been picking for recent, even at the SPL level, have been so dominant on this pick. Gotta get rid of her, because Johnny is just controlling this game with Cozyx.
But even then, I could see the Gilded Gladiators going to a team discussion saying, we dominated this game. We won this game until Snoopy teleported into a mid-tier 1 tower against 4, and then walked the wrong direction at Gold Fury until Jangaru walked up into the 4-man in the pit. There were misplays individually that cost the entire team of the Gladiators. That was not a game where Mambo came in and just won from the offset. They didn't walk in at level 0 and just win out. They were handed opportunities back in.
And this is a composition that Mambo's been playing for months at this point. You load into any day of the week this year, and that's a Mambo comp, and it's the one that wins out here in game number 1. The SCC up 1-0 over the Gilded Gladiators. Can the Gladiators find that fight back? Find out in game number 2 right after this.
about fame. It ain't about fake friends. And screw your ex, is such a flake. Forget your grades, you need a break. You, it's all about you. No matter what the others say. But now I'm done talking, the lights on me. I tell you, I guarantee this night's about to take a turn for the better. Now the rain is pouring and all I see is lightning around my feet. Now nothing can bring me down. I just wanna dance till my heart goes la la la. I just wanna dance. I just wanna dance till my heart goes la la la. I just wanna dance. I just wanna dance till my heart goes la la la. I just wanna dance. I just wanna dance till my heart goes la la la. I just wanna dance. It ain't about money. It ain't about the coolest job. It's about having fun and love the ones that makes you shine. You, it's all about you. No matter what the others say. But now I'm done talking, the lights on me. I tell you, I guarantee this night's about to take a turn for the better. Now the rain is pouring and all I see is lightning around my feet. Now nothing can bring me down. I just wanna dance till my heart goes la la la. I just wanna dance. I just wanna dance till my heart goes la la la. I just wanna dance. I'm done talking, the lights on me. I tell you, I guarantee this night's about to take a turn for the better. Now the rain is pouring and all I see is lightning around my feet.
Well, Hex Mambo strikes first and gets the first victory in this one. We'll see how well that continues, if the Gladiators can answer back, or if things are going to maybe get a little shaky for them. Before we do that, though, I want to talk to you about looking good in about a week and what one event that you would want to look good for. There was probably a way better way to lead into that. The World Championship's coming up, and of course, our partners over at Skulls have made some fantastic merchandise for that. So if you want to represent this, whether you're going to be at home, again, being able to watch from Worlds and tweet at us while we're at Worlds, show us how you're watching, or if you're going to be in venue at location, then represent the SMITE World Championship. There's a ton of merchandise: the hat, the bag, the jersey, t-shirts for your favorite teams, as well as more hoodies, joggers, etc. You should go to shop.hi-rezstudios.com/SWC and pick that up, because there is not a whole lot of time left to try and wear it for the SMITE World Championship in a week. I guess you could get it for something after that, but next week. Like next week, it's happening. So make sure that you get on that again, shop.hi-rezstudios.com/SBL. But it's Gore, it's Frog, and again, it is a 1-0 lead for Hex Mambo. One that may be a little perplexing depending on how you shake it out. But, we had kind of talked about it. First off, chat, I think it was, 63% in favor of Hex
Pretty
Mambo?
heavily, yeah.
And on top of that, we were both, after picks and bans, vibing a little bit more with Hex Mambo's draft.
Yep.
And I feel like, and we've mentioned this a couple times, but the Gladiators have been maybe considered the underdog in this matchup to begin with. And this game lived to that expectation.
Yeah, it was definitely a tough showing from them. I think that there were moments of positivity. The early game, they had some picks that were positive, especially Kana, I think, on some of those early rotations. But at the end of the day, I once again, I'm very, keep coming back to the point. The composition from Hex Mambo is exactly how they drew it up. That is what they wanted from day one. They wanted a bunch of knockups. They wanted Johnny on this Awilix. They wanted to be having the engagement center around him. they wanted Rapio on this aggressive pick, right? They got everything they wanted in a draft, and it felt like the Gilded Gladiators got a lot of tools. I mean, we talked about this on the first test. They got a lot of tools that they could use, but harder to execute, and especially if you're falling a little bit behind, and time again you lose some of those small engagements, starting to fall behind in gold. It was really Hex Mambo who came away with it, and that was the real story about it, was those small engagements, right? You have a gank on the left, this end call where I think, like Mifflin said, they didn't even know they were going to end. They didn't even mean to end. They just saw Jangaru standing there and were like, oh, we can probably end. So, I mean, they did a really good job of taking the opportunities presented to them, but if I'm the Gilded Gladiators, I am going back to the drawing board on this draft, and I mean, at this point, Chernobog still 100% loss rate. I don't know about that pick, man. I don't know.
He was in a weird spot towards the tail end of the phase as well, right? Even in playoffs, like there were moments, and I think we've even had this discussion a few times where it was like, if his ult was not, hey, get over to this lane in like 2 seconds, then he probably just isn't even being looked at for the rest of his kit. But
right.
As of right now, at least this week, he's not been holding his own too well. So we'll see where his priority is. We saw earlier today, the beginning of the day, completely ignored. But we also saw that with Raijin in the first set, and then in the second set looked okay. This game looked pretty good for him there for Rapio. So how things change in picks and bans is going to be a pretty big deal, I think, for both Hex Mambo, but especially for the Gladiators. If you are trying right now to put your best foot forward, this is a win you sincerely want, because this win puts you into a qualification match immediately and gives you an opportunity to qualify there, or if you lose that, you get another opportunity in a qualification match. Whereas if you lose right here, you have to beat someone in an elimination match to even get to look at a chance at qualifying, and then you only get the one shot. So the Gladiators want to pull it back, and they want to pull it back as best they can. They're going to start off by banning Baba Yaga. They're going to start off by banning Thoth to try and limit a little bit more of Hex Mambo. And so far, it's 2 shots in mid, 1 shot to the jungle. There's the Awilix, but you're also letting through a whole lot to try and take that away.
You needed some sort of adaptation, and at the very least, I'm happy with taking the Awilix away, right? Baba Yaga and Thoth were banned away in game number 1. I think same bans as well from Hex Mambo on that side. They take away some of their critical picks the Glads might go back to. But this time, I mean, the Glads were in first pick in game number 1. They chose to go to this Ratatoskr. I don't think Kyrmi had a bad game. I think he struggled a little bit to keep up with the pressure that Dzoni and the rest of the team was providing. This time around, though, the Hachiman first pick is an interesting one for me, because it doesn't feel, I mean, there's a lot of hunters on the board, there's a lot of safety up on the board. This doesn't feel like one that you necessarily needed to pick first. At the same time, though, if you're valuing Snoopy's safety, he's been a real linchpin of this draft, right? And certainly better than flying in on the Chernobog and instantly dying would be to be there in the team fight, have a little bit of safety, right? So giving Snoopy a comfort pick off the bat, I think not a bad idea to start out the draft.
Yeah, being able to like you said, find a little more consistency over in the long lane. And Hachi's been the one to do it, and plus we've seen even earlier, you can get some really good performances out of a Hachi in the right hands. And so that is a lot of safety. Maybe not someone we expected to see up towards the top. But when you have the other half of the bans, I don't think I mentioned Hex Mambo, but you know, your Aphrodite, your Athena, and your Mammon taken off, you kind of got to figure out, okay, where do we go now? And this is where they choose. Raijin comes back to make a revenge tour for Hex Mambo, and Ishtar locked in alongside it. Again, another one that's been really consistent. It feels like for a long time, Frog, it was Chernobog, and then like Ishtar, Hachi, Rom, and maybe like 3 others. It felt like there was just a really consistent, okay, we're going to grab this guy who's number 1, and then just anybody else. Like there's a few that you just don't pick, but for the most part, everybody was in a thin, like, margins within each other. On her was pretty big. If Cherno's gone, then we might just be in a thin line where it's just like, all right, cool, here's 6 different carries you can play.
Right, yeah, I mean, I think you hit a bunch of them, right? Rama, Ishtar, and Hachi, the 2 that we see on her. You've mentioned, we've even seen, you know, earlier on some of those, the mage ADCs, yeah. Sol and Olaran bringing a lot of pressure towards that lane, but a lot of it is dependent on comfort, right? Because at the end of the day, your ADC is going to take down your Phoenix. Your ADC is going to hit the objective hard. And so what other things vary from ADC to ADC? You get fight pressure, right? Ishtar is going to bring a lot more of that fight pressure. You get safety, have to consider survivability. Ishtar's got a little bit less of that. Hachiman, maybe a little bit more of that survivability. And then, of course, ability to adapt and shred, right? Ishtar, I mean, both these hunters have a pretty good time building crit. I consider Ishtar like the shred person. You've got like the whole array of autos. You can stand right up next to the fire giant and you get to shred it down as fast as you can. So they both have slightly varying strengths, but you're right. I mean, both bringing ADC things. Gilded Gladiators, though, going back to I mean, maybe they're thinking game one was a little bit of a fluke. They felt comfortable with their draft. They want to try and have a better early game. They go back to some of these core picks, the Charon and the Ratatoskr.
Yeah.
Another set of semi-global pressure for Kyrmi to potentially run the map. And maybe they're thinking, okay, well, now that we've taken away the Awilix, Johnny more likely to go for one of those later game picks. Maybe we can get away with the Ratatoskr pressure in the early game.
The one thing I've been keeping my eye on, now I can see it happening a little bit more. It looks like Kyrmi's, he yawned a little bit ago, but not a lot of energy in the Glads booth, just in general. I mean, like, we have flipped over. Maybe it's different for now, but, like, I feel like a lot of the time that we've been in the Hex Mambo booth, there were smiles and laughs and jokes to be had. Like, everybody was kind of jovial and energetic. And not seeing that on the other side is a little shaky going into game two. Maybe they're just hyper-focused. But now I'm starting to see conversation flow a little bit more, which is what I was looking for. Hex Mambo lock in Ganesha. And we said this quite a few times, but you go back to the very beginning of the year, Aurora said it was going to be the year of the elephant. And we've seen him, I feel like phase one, it was absolutely just dominant, especially when we saw, Masters. But sporadically over the last few months, Ganesha has really been able to kind of make an appearance and make a big shine. And control a little bit of what maybe the Gladiators are looking for. The Morrigan banned out by Hex Mambo. Agni taken out alongside her. Thor, and you have to think maybe another Johnny pick coming up soon in the ban column from the Gladiators. They do not want him to be comfortable. Unfortunately, Frog, at least in the history that I've looked at, that's a hard thing to control, is Johnny's picks overall. They take out the Mercury.
He's got a lot of picks.
And yeah, he's got a lot that he can really rely on. And the real question at that point is trying to narrow it down to figure out what it's going to be. But with the Mercury, Thor, Awilix, and I would argue that maybe only one of those is really like a true meta pick right now. So he's got the world to flow into.
Yeah, I'm not sure Johnny has ever cared about what the meta actually is. Like he just started playing Awilix because he liked Awilix, and Awilix has always had pressure and can do those things. But I mean, he was playing Ao Kuang when nobody else was playing Ao Kuang. He was playing Kali when nobody else was playing Kali. That's kind of what it's set up for now. I'd love to see one of those late game hyper carries. You got the space for it on the other side. You got the peel to help out with the Ganesha. I think there's room for it, but they saved his pick towards last, right? Ganesha, Year of the Elephant, you mentioned. I looked it up. We're in 2024 now. This is the Year of the Dragon, but we're coming off of the Year of the Rabbit. And so I think dragons are closer to elephants than rabbits. So I think
on like a scale size, I'm with you there.
Yeah. So
And
I think we're closer.
To be like the difference between like a wyvern and a dragon is dragons have 4 legs, wyverns like their arms are the wings or something like that.
What is a wyvern?
Okay, I'm getting too nerdy. If that, if I say that and that's the response, I've gone too deep into lore. I will give you credit though. You had mentioned the Ao Kuang and the Kali, top picked gods that Johnny's gone back to constantly. I'm also really curious. Daji a few weeks ago was pretty popular. A lot of CC immunity, or at least safety on the people you'd probably be trying to chase down. Morgan Le Fay and King Arthur jumping in though. And again, gods, we were actually talking a little bit about Morgan Le Fay during game number 1. But with King Arthur, it feels like something that you're looking for. I'm going to call it consistency here in the Gladiators. You've got picks that do their jobs, and they can do it relatively easily in each fight.
Yeah, I mean, it's hard to not do your job as King Arthur. Assuming you come to the fight and you are even and you are of normal soul laner status, you got a couple defense items online, you're going to spin around, you're going to do a little bit of damage, you're going to prop CC as your abilities come up, right? You are the pinnacle of soul laners, right? So it's hard to not do your job. A good, reliable pick there if you're Kana. On the other side, though, you get these last couple of lock-ins from Hex Mambo. Sun Wukong and Camazotz maybe a little bit more potential for aggression there. Sun Wukong more likely to build a little bit of damage, right? Has more potential to just take out a carry in the backline. Camazotz has that potential too. Wants to go in, delete somebody, and then press the get out of jail free card. Go up into the air, find that CC immunity. Now granted, Camazotz not really a pick that I associate with Johnny. I think we've seen him on it before, not really recently, but if you're looking for pressure in the jungle, if you're looking to run it down, they've picked 4 out of 5. Maybe Ganesh is the only one that I would say I'd like counter-engaging on Ganesh a little bit more than just raw pressure. But there is certainly a lot of raw pressure on this Hex Mambo comp.
It's Johnny's win rates, by the way, are just so out of whack where, I go to look up like, oh, I haven't seen him play this god in a while. And it's like, oh, yeah, you're right. I haven't seen him. He's still got an 80% win rate on Camazotz. But it's like that for quite literally, like his top 10 gods are all just ridiculous. And it does feel, much to what you had said, where counter engage exists, I think, for the Ganesh. It really does feel like Hex Mambo have rip the carpet out from under your feet kind of draft, where it's like, okay, you're going to engage, cool. Ganesh is going to stop you. Camazotz is now in his ult. Wukong's up on a cloud. Good luck killing anybody.
Yeah.
And at that point, you're just like, all right, now what do we do if you're the Gladiators? And I think that's a question they might have to answer. Using all of that as just a defense, maybe too much of a commit for Hex Mambo. But that is the question. Last time around, we were looking at the Gladiators. Rat, to me, I want to see Kyrmi get a little more active early on. They had a good gold lead at the beginning of the game, but do you think that there's much they can change playstyle-wise going into this game with this style draft, or do you think it's going to be a little later?
Well, I think I am much happier with this draft just on face value. I think you go to a traditional mage, right? Morrigan the Fae coming to the mid lane over the Morrigan. You don't have the transformation options. You can't have Chernobog, right, joining a fight. You can't have the Ratatoskr coming through in a fight, but you do have that more reliable mage follow-up, which I think if you're Kyrmi and you're thinking of how you're going to work through this early game, through this mid game with Jangaru, not only is your mid 2v2 a little bit better, more of that guaranteed damage, but you also have a little bit more rotation potential. We saw those mid laners in the dual lane early as of last game. They had some rotation, so I think you get a little bit easier to execute in the composition for the Gilded Gladiators. And if anything, Kyrmi not up against the Awilix, against the Camazotz this time around, should have a little bit more pressure in the jungle, I think.
Well, the question is going to be how well the Gladiators can respond to Hex Mambo, or Hex Mambo find themselves a 2-0 and show us what EU SCC has to offer today. The only way to find out is to jump down to the casters.
Well, currently 1-1 with SCC as far as our sets go and qualifying further forward. We'll see if Hex Mambo can push that advantage to the SCC once more as you have in game number 2. It's J-Mac, Mifflin, and Doug. You're going to be action for game 2 with Hex Mambo up in that 1-0 lead. Didn't really feel like they changed too much of how their composition functions at a baseline. Rapio back on the Raijin, Spudio with the Ishtar again. Just kind of changing up their front line a little bit and then taking Johnny off of the hyper-aggressive Awilix and putting it onto an maybe equally sustained, heavy, and aggressive Camazotz this time.
Maybe one of the only picks that I would argue is more aggressive than Awilix, right? You take the level 5 on Awilix and you're like, all right, give me a little knock up and I'll pull him back towards me. You get to level 5 on Camazotz, it's, I'm going to hit him from downtown, I'm going to jump forward, and then I'm going to go up into the air, I'll be intangible. And here's the thing, also dealing damage to my enemy all the while. So a lot of potential for dive on the side of Hex Mambo's jungle. Kyrmi similarly has dive potential. That Rat had a good performance, and this time around having a more standardized mage should have some of that follow-up that he was lacking in a few of those left side engagements that we saw. We'll have to see how it plays out. Otherwise, Snoopy on something I think he's a little bit more comfortable on. That Chernobog was looking a little bit iffy in game 1. Hachiman, a bit easier to execute on. Ultimate, AoE, teamfight ultimate, very safe in lane. Should be able to hold his own. My concern lies in the jungle matchup, though. It just feels like Johnny and Kyrmi are fighting back and forth to dictate pace, and Johnny just pulled a bit ahead in game 1. We'll see if this time Kyrmi can hold on to his lead.
And it wasn't like Kyrmi wasn't trying to fight for a lead in game number 1.
Oh, he was fighting.
Very aggressive plays, fights over around the Fire Giant pit, ganks over to dual lane, constant dunks, but just lacking that little extra bit of damage, that little extra push to get some of those kills. So we'll see maybe Kyrmi come up a little bit more successful this time in game number 2. And I kind of want to pan over to Khan on the King Arthur, a god that we really haven't seen much of, I would say, almost this entire year, but is now sprung into Kana's hands this time around. Maybe a bit of the Rise of Warriors or Bluestone kind of helps him out a little bit, so I'm curious to see how Kana progresses through all of this. The scuffles happen in the mid lane, lower health bars on the side of Mambo. Kyrmi and Jangaru still keeping up their front, and trying to keep that pressure up in mid.
Yeah, I think King Arthur is an interesting topic of conversation because so much of his lane can look exactly like this. Just bullying out, 1v1, sticks to it, he's got it!
Johnny's got it, can he get out? Dragonflight pushes him away and takes him down. Now it's Rapio versus Jangaru. Does manage to get 2 ticks of Percussive Storm, but that's not enough damage. The faster burst by Jangaru puts Rapio back to the tier 1 tower. First blood to Hex Mambo, but quick follow-up by Jangaru to return it.
Johnny's an animal, man. That guy is just crazy. Knows his damage numbers perfectly, jukes out the last AoE auto attack from Kyrmi, and then leaps in aggressive to secure that kill. I wonder if he decides to, instead of trying to walk away, to just stand on the pool from his passive, of whether or not he would have had enough to survive that dragon flight from Jangaru. Regardless, it's still a phenomenal first blood for the jungler, and worthwhile. That will put Jangaru in a slight position of power, probably about a quarter of a level to half a level up as of right now, but that bounty going over to Johnny, I mean, I can't think of anyone else I'd rather have it on my team.
Want to make sure you get Johnny as far ahead as you can. Level 3s for both the junglers. Kyrmi over near the blue buff that's about to spawn in. Julio's not very healthy. Johnny, he took the 1v1 last time and might just take it again. He's returning a lot of damage back to Kyrmi with backup from Kana. I don't think Johnny wants to stand his ground too much. Instead of a fight and an invade for the blue buff, Gilded Gladiators will go ahead and give up their chance of taking one away and go back to the safer call of securing their own buff. Kana on a healthier HP bar than both Julio and Johnny combined at that time. Surprise. Maybe the Gilded Gladiators don't push forward.
I mean, Kyrmi had already used so much in that fight, even using the dart for a little bit of additional damage, so I don't think it had anything left in the tank to fight around. And Kana, although is incredibly powerful right now, King Arthur, a great lane bully, as the desk highlights so well, doesn't exactly have the best gap close until he gets his ultimate available to him. Once you have a fully charged up ultimate, all of a sudden your chase potential is pretty high, but catching up in that situation was just about impossible. So catch and release for Johnny, as both junglers reset themselves back to neutral. But one just a little bit healthier than the other. Allowed to get involved, clears out red, clears out speed, and even makes a rotation over for some neutral camps. Kyrmi forced back to base there. I'll have to head back once more, or rather won't, excuse me. Rat passive, how could I ever forget? You can finish up that acorn from anywhere on map and does exactly that. So maybe a slight opportunity now for the Gilded Gladiators to get aggressive, as Johnny will be forced back to base.
Johnny goes back, likely to finish up that Jotun's Wrath for himself, does so. Even out in items compared to his opponent in the jungle, maybe holding on to a bit of that extra gold for some time. But for Kana, and I think question then goes kind of as a double conversation for the soul laners, is how does Kana kind of play his part for this team composition when it comes to the team fights? When you look at the previous game with like what Julio is running with the Chaac, it's a lot of AoE style of damage to really deny out entire areas versus the Sun Wukong, a bit more single target focused. Is Kana kind of in that same spot here where he's more single target focused to a backline? We might have to hold that as the 2v2 breaks out. Kana dashes away. Kyrmi goes back in, says that's not enough distance to get away. Kana trying to take out Johnny. Johnny barely doesn't get the damage. And a stun from Kana nearly takes down Johnny. Almost gets the kill in solo, but not quite enough for either of the members to go down.
Man, these junglers are throwing haymakers at each other. Kyrmi just disregarding Johnny in the fight, says, I'll get my kill, I'll get up in the air, it's not going to be an issue. Unfortunately for him, no kill, but does make his way up to the air with the help of Kana. Just crazy exchanges everywhere on the map. Feels like next kill for either of these junglers might just be the pace setter for the rest of the match, especially if it's going to continue at this pace. That kill might just be on either of these junglers. But to answer your question about what exactly is King Arthur good at, it's stopping ADCs and it's stopping mages simply by dealing damage.
Jake uses his ultimate to zone away for shield buff. Only taps Cozyx this time, but that's a team fight now down on the side of the Gladiators. Jangaru trying to steal a buff away, gets back from Kyrmi, who dives in. Ultimates are good, and Jangaru puts down Johnny. Now it's just Rapio to defend against 3, not able to secure his own buff this time. A steal away by the Gilded Gladiators, plus an extra kill, puts them a nice little slight bit in the lead.
Yeah, tough stuff there for Johnny. Leaps in, gets hit by that incredibly fast CC that is Dragonflight. From there, chain CC from Kyrmi, make sure there's no way out. And Johnny, even with CDR in first item, Jotun's 20%, still do not have that ultimate available. That's essentially the linchpin of Camazotz' game plan. Camazotz going to win the DPS race and will win the majority of 1v1s, but it's contingent on his ultimate. Just having it, having that added layer of safety allows you to do so much more damage. You can utilize your leap more aggressively. If he goes in without it, that's what it's going to look like every time. That Camazotz, he's got a lot of safety, so long as that blue diamond next to his name is full.
I mean, look at a difference in builds that Soul Laners have gone for, both towards Bluestone. When I saw that Emerald, I thought we might be seeing another Gauntlet of Thieves, but instead it's going to be Stone of Gaia for Kana this time. So no initial protections, just a lot of HP, and more than anything with that, a lot of HP 5 that goes with them. So we're going to have a ton of health to play with, but not really any other kind of defenses that go alongside. You see the massive influx of that one, but it's that passive HP generation means he doesn't really have to worry about potions as much, maybe. But then the extra little benefit, the extra power you get whenever you get that pull, might not even need it. He's taking this 1v1 against Julio any day of the week, and he's winning them handedly.
Yeah, Kana's also got the additional benefit of having teleport, whereas Julio's elected to pick up Blink himself. So taking trades in lane, trading HP, and then sending Julio back to base, always going to benefit the Order side team. Watch Kyrmi. If he finds the stun here, might just be enough damage between the two of them to knock down Julio. Instead, will be a reset. Don't want to walk in towards that tower. Stone of Gaia also has decent matchup into Sun Wukong. Anytime you're hit by the Ox Swarm, get additional healing. Anytime Cozyx hits you with remove obstacles, get that additional healing as well.
Blink on a Jangaru, ultimate from Jake. Not jumped over by Johnny this time. Does have access to ult, but doesn't even need it. Now Kyrmi here to leap over it by Johnny. Rapio still alive, but goes down, and now with the Hunter joining the fray, the Gilded Gladiators can try and turn this fight back around. Ultimate used by Cozyx to bail them out, but Jake hasn't quite given up yet. Just now, spotting out Spudio might be the end of the push for the Gladiators on one side, but with Spudio in a 3v1, could have been dangerous, except that Kyrmi got hit by a bit too much damage.
Thought maybe we'd see Spudio throw out the ultimate after he finds that CC there. Looks for it again, finds Kyrmi, but auto's blocked out by Awesome Jake. Should spell the end of this engagement. Purple buff spawning. Looks to me like the Gladiators want this one.
Cozyx is low. Jake's got a good poke, but Johnny's wrapping back around. I don't think the Gilded Gladiators know they're about to fight another 3v2. Snoopy doesn't have ultimate. Jake doesn't either. Johnny spots him out on the dash, and that's a death onto the Hunter. Johnny comes back from the grave just to put one in the dirt himself. And now it's the Gilded Gladiators back on defense. You look up at the top of the charts, though, it's still a really dead even game here, only 9 minutes in.
Man, another slept-on facet of Camazotz' game is just how much sustain he's got in the jungle. Healing from the leap, from picking up those vampiric pools. Just makes it so easy for him to re-engage on the fight, whereas Kyrmi was legitimately forced back to base, was not allowed to stay involved on that left-hand side. So great stuff, and great wherewithal from Johnny to realize that the Gilded Gladiators were in a position to look for that steal. Decides to rotate back through, makes the fight look real good, and puts himself in the lead now. Level 10 to the 9 of Kyrmi on the other side, but there are still silver linings for the Gilded Gladiators, who are about 1,000 gold up as an entire team unit. About 1 level for Snoopy, and approaching the Gold Fury, that's going to be significant. You got a level for Jangaru as well, who has been playing very aggressive on the center of the map and throwing a lot of damage Rapio's way, been looking for invades himself. Gilded Gladiators still playing with confidence.
That's confidence that they need going to not just this game, but potentially even a game number 3 here against Hex Mambo. Spudio locked in her tier 1 tower. Same for Julio on the opposite side. Anytime Kyrmi has shown face over here, which results in Julio having to sit so far back on the Wukong. Still goose eggs on the columns of both of the Soul Laners, despite how much fighting has happened over there, but waiting for that first big fight to break out where Kana breaks away from that side of the map. You highlighted earlier, teleport there for Kana. Hasn't fully upgraded it just yet, but a few hundred gold is all that it takes for him to go back, pick up that tier 3, and then join the fight, which could break out around Beacon or even around this duo lane. Cozyx takes a very aggressive path in. Gets some good damage on Snoopy, but Snoopy's just fine. He's got the rest of his team standing by in the jungle.
Yeah, Kyrmi's global presence means he can be involved in that fight just about at a moment's notice, so not going to be able to fully commit our Hex Mambo on the left-hand side. I'm looking at these comps, and if the pace continues, the Gilded Gladiators will rotate into that mid-game with a pretty decent, substantial lead, but neutral objectives got to be on the mind here. And looking at the ward presence from the Gilded Gladiators on the left-hand side, they are absolutely dominating around that Gold Fury. potential for Snoopy to boost his team's DPS with Heavenly Banner. Kyrmi's got pretty decent shred. Jake can control space relatively well. I'd like to see the Gilded Gladiators try and at least poke in towards that Fury.
Getting vision via the Oracles is a good start for the Gladiators. We're about 40 seconds till that first beacon spawns up. I'm keeping eyes on Kana to see if he makes that rotation over from solo, whether it be with his own 2 feet walking over, or if he upgrades that teleport and jumps over right away. I'll have to wait on that though, because we're still a few seconds out from there. So instead, so what else is available for the map? Relics are up for just about everybody else across the board. It's really just that teleport from Kana down, so team fight means that everybody's got access to every tool in their arsenal should a fight break out.
Any fight that breaks out for the Gilded Gladiators should be favored to them now. Significant lead. I didn't realize exactly how far ahead Jangaru really was. Hasn't head back to base in a little while, but still has a itemization advantage on Rapio, who just came back from base. Should be sitting on a pretty significant amount of gold in hand, nearly 13 some odd hundred, so able to upgrade that item before too long. If the Gilded Gladiators can start playing around their lead in mid, maybe one way to start finding some of those wins in the PvP.
Kyrmi and Jake team up. Ultimate from Jake hits all 3 of Hex Mambo. Spudio flips away to his own death, and now with Kyrmi here, 4 versus 2. It's going to be an easy fight for Gilded Gladiators. Cozyx picked up by the solo later as Kana has made his presence known on the left side of the map. Everybody but Jangaru is on his way now to see if they can get an extra kill. 2 down on Mambo, and about to be a 3rd to the hands of awesome Jake. The Gilded Gladiators sweep a fight. They lose out 1, but they pick off 3.
No rotation from Rapio there. Thought maybe we'd see him trying to match the rotation of Jangaru instead. Trust Johnny to make it out of there alive. And Johnny did have access to the ultimate, but holds onto it, hoping for a bit of counterplay or perhaps a turnaround inside of the tower. Unfortunately for him, no opportunity presented, as Awesome Jank takes it up perfectly. Say tanks it up perfectly, but resets the Gold Fury, but nobody nearby to punish, means that they'll grab it nonetheless. And the Gilded Gladiators looking real good after a great fight on the left-hand side. I thought maybe that fight was lost once Kyrmi had got clipped so many times by the Dharmic Pillars, but Johnny's only able to return the 1, and the rest of the Gilded Gladiators so healthy, dive that tower and make it look simple.
That's the Gilded Gladiators with about 3,000 gold. One of the more significant leads we've seen this early in the game from either of these two teams, and really throughout even the course of the day. Some of these early games have been 500 to 1,000 gold by this point of the game. So with a 3K up lead, where the Gilded Gladiators go? First beacon's already down. Pyromancer's about to spawn in. Could be topic of conversation for the Gilded Gladiators. Maybe depending to see if we at least see a rotation from Snoopy that way, but it seems that he's content with sitting over in the left side of the map. Julio under fire once more by the Gilded Gladiators, but half his HP down. He's still walking forward and just taking constant chip damage from Kana, from Kyrmi, even with Cozyx nearby. Julio's not entirely safe, but maybe if they can get one bit of CC on Kyrmi could be great, but Kyrmi, fast reactions up on the tree, out of the fight entirely. Hex Mambo and Gilded Gladiators both come out empty-handed in the war of attrition on right.
Yeah, Julio decides he really wants to keep that tier 1 tower up, so it takes a lot of damage to clear out that wave. With rotation from the rest of the team, able to dissuade the Gilded Gladiators from continuing their onslaught. It is worth noting the relic difference now between Kana and Julio. I thought maybe we'd see teleport second slot. Instead, it's Blink and Beads for the Sun Wukong, concerned with the CC output and CC chain potential. The Gilded Gladiators, Kyrmi and Kana, when they're together, I mean, there's so much CC. Jake's got some of it from absolutely the furthest depths of the map. Global taunts in as Johnny has got eyes for Snoopy.
But at the similar regard, Kyrmi has eyes for Spudio. They take down
Yikes.
1, but Johnny has to use the ultimate to try and kill Snoopy. Aegis stops the second swipe, but the third one is there. Johnny goes down to Kyrmi. It's a double for the jungler of the Gilded Gladiators. Cost Snoopy his life, but Kyrmi will take that double trade.
Yeah, Johnny, rare whiff from him. Misses out on that Vampiric Bats, which forces him to use the ultimate to finish off the kill on a Snoopy. Had he hit Vampiric, would have still had ultimate for Kyrmi, and maybe could have found the double kill himself. Instead, it's the Gilded Gladiators ahead once more, pulling the Pyro.
Rapio's nearby. Cozyx has ultimate. This isn't a free Pyro for the Gilded Gladiators just yet. Frenzy Pop, ultimate by Jake. Dharmic Pillars of the Gladiators who get 1, and Jake should be just fine. Runic Bomb on the ground waiting to be picked up by one of the Gilded Gladiators, but an objective for them. Now push their elite over 5,000. Straight tidal wave. Does manage to catch out Spudio, who's just clearing out some waves, but The Gladiators starting to push some of their advantage. 5,000 gold up for them.
Yeah, this is good for the Gilded Gladiators. They need to maintain this pace. We haven't seen Hex Mambo play as 5 just yet. A lot of these engagements for the Gilded Gladiators are off the back of numbers advantages. We've seen Jangaru getting the better end of his rotations, Cxnnahh omnipresent on the map thanks to that teleport, Kyrmi leveraging his global as well to make sure that any ganks that Dzoni tries to do, Kyrmi can be there just as fast. So maybe if the Hex Mambo can just slow things down, start to group up as 5, some of these engagements can start shifting ever so slightly back in their favor, so long as they don't allow this gold lead to balloon too much more out of control.
Jake still playing aggressive on the Charon. Forces 3 back to the Tier 1 tower. And Oni Fury about to spawn back in. So the Gladiators will clear out the Oracle Harpies and get their vision inside the pit. Which ward coverage on this left side has been the name of the game for the Gladiators throughout this entire second game. Even Jake going so far out to get a ward towards Spudio at the top end near the Tier 2 tower, just to try and guarantee that they have the zoning, that they have the coverage to try and go for this Oni once it spawns in. Beacon nearly up as well for that second spawn of itself. And we're not really seeing the Soul Laners too involved, aside from the one that we saw from Cxnnahh. Rotated over to the left side and netted the Gilded Gladiators that first big team fight in that first objective. Wouldn't be surprised if the go button is Cxnnah's rotation over.
Yeah, the Hex Mambo are going to need Julio involved in these next few fights. Cozyx just off the mark with remove obstacles. But here is Julio, finally there to start separating these engagements. Stygian Beacon seems to be the target of his ire, but a 5-on-5 brewing.
Kyrmi rotating to the jungle. 2 levels up over Dzoni. At this point, the most significant lead that we have on the map so far. Acorn Blast does hit Cozyx, but Cozyx still fairly tanky, so does do some decent damage. Now it's all 5 of the Gladiators grouping up. Cozyx might just be caught out. He's got nowhere to run. Rapio can't save him. It's Cxnnahh with 1. Now it's a 5v4 for the Gladiators. Kyrmi up on the tree, and his target is Rapio. Waits for him to Thunder Crash away. Gets the Aegis out, waiting out on the beads, but it's not even gonna matter. Now 2 for the Gilded Gladiators, and it could just be 3. Dzoni has to swing away on the bat out of hell just to survive. Spudio, the only healthy one left on Hex Mambo.
Cozyx has to get that Dharmic Pillar off before he dies. If he does, the fight looks ever so slightly better. At least drops the Gilded Gladiators lower on disengage. Instead, goes down for free. The Gilded Gladiators make it look so simple. That initiation from Kyrmi to catch Rapio, post-Tycho drum. Jangaru absolutely dominating Dzoni in the 1v1 there. Dzoni trying his best to isolate mages. That's what assassins do. They jump on mages. Difference is, not every mage has got an instant knock-up that also pushes you away. Dragonflight just makes that so difficult. I think Dzoni might be able to win out on that 1v1 if he leaps in then pre-beads his Dragonflight, but then if you don't get it, all of a sudden it's this rock, paper, scissors game of I just lost my beads for nothing. Speaking of for nothing, Fire Giant pulled, not many Mambo here.
About a quarter HP left on the fire. Julio, Dzoni nearby, but can't even get in to steal it away. No. A Runic Bomb helps secure that one for the Gilded Gladiators. Get fire on all 5 and only 19 minutes in the game. Gilded Gladiators are setting a pace we haven't seen by many teams yet today. 6,500 gold up. And still with pressure, mid-tier 1 is the next answer for them. They get a 4-man grouping around that one as Kyrmi rotates over to the right side to start split pushing with the Oni wave they got earlier. Gilded Gladiators, they're keeping their foot firmly on the gas pedal this game.
Tier 2 burning quickly. No defense from Hex Mambo. They just let that one go down. And no damage returned. The Gilded Gladiators still healthy enough to keep up their own siege. Right side, it's Kyrmi making it happen on his own. Dzoni still has something to say in the 1v1 though.
Does get some damage, but it's returned back by Kyrmi. Kyrmi's got a couple extra levels. Jump over the leap by Dzoni. We'll try and go for the chase on Kyrmi. Blink is down for 20 seconds, but Kyrmi, maybe with a bit of word from the rest of the team, Hex Mambo rotating over. He'll use the ultimate and bail out right away. Spudio, recognizing there's not much he can do around those towers, split pushes his own, takes out a tier 2 on left and trade for the 2 towers taken by the Gilded Gladiators.
So the Gilded Gladiators have knocked out just about every easy structure that's going to come their way. No neutral objectives on the map either. It means that you have to really evaluate that 5-on-5. I don't imagine we see too much of a split push. If anything, Kyrmi might try and solo agent mid, while the other 4-man core of the Gilded Gladiators knock down that tier 2 on left. But it's so difficult for junglers to do the 1v1 thing when the other jungler is Camazotz. We even saw it there. Dzoni is significantly behind and still does enough damage to threaten Kyrmi, has enough sustain in kit to just re-sustain, go back into the fight afterwards. So Kyrmi's going to have to play that very smart. And it will be a 4-1 split. Kyrmi on center. But no dedicated defense just yet from Hex Mambo. Rapio kind of hovering the jungle.
Now 3 levels for Kyrmi. Still not upgrading on the starter yet. But Julio's here as well, so it's not a 1v1 that Kyrmi's maybe hoping for. Ult by Jake under the tier 2. It catches out Rapio and gets the beads out of the mid laner. Tier 2 tower for the Gladiators and maybe a bit more. Julio able to get to the Ox form in time to bail away from the Gladiators' 5-man core, but now the Gladiators can regroup over on left. They got a minion wave on the way. Could just start their push towards tower. Kyrmi blinks past, missed the dash, misses nearly everything on Johnny, but Johnny will use the bat out of hell, fly away for the time, but Kyrmi might just chase him down and force a 4v4 with the rest of the teams.
No bat out of hell means Johnny not exactly favored in that 1v1. Kyrmi hunting him down, but doesn't have the rotation path, even using that dart to see if he was behind that speed buff wall. Johnny passed very well towards that right side of the map, but nonetheless, it's Kyrmi rejoining the team. Now 5-man potential up against the 4 of Hex Mambo. That ultimate is so significant for Johnny. Everything I said earlier about Camazotz winning the 1v1, that's not true until that diamond is full.
He does manage to get his Bloodforge online, so Johnny more sustained to his name if he didn't already have an abundance of it. 4 versus 4 under left Phoenix. Cozyx still holding on to ultimate. Rapio on this Raijin throws out that second ability, the Raiju plus the Divine Ruin proc. Those bounces between the players starting to stack up damage. You can see that already on Snoopy. He'll be able to resustain thanks to the help of his lifesteal, and if they choose to go back to an objective, but poke is poke as long as you don't have any way to immediately resustain it back.
Kyrmi up to the air. Spudio, no dash. Forced to use Beads Aegis early. Good peel from Cozyx, but is it enough?
Silence keeps him alive for now. The tidal wave does clip Spudio, but he might as well be out of the fight as well as Johnny used the bat out of hell to try and take down Snoopy, who's in the middle of the pillars, and it's Rapio to turn it around and get the first kill of the fight. Julio crashes in off of the cloud.
He's still
and now
going?
it's Jangaru in danger. Beads and Aegis away from their mid laner on the Gladiators, and it's Julio with his first kill of the game, and Spudio takes down Kyrmi. The Gladiators had it all for them, and now it's Hex Mambo pushing them all the way back. It's just the tanks left for the Gilded Gladiators, and it might not be for much longer. Jake caught out, and Jake taken down. 4 for Hex Mambo at the mid lane.
Dharmic Pillars boxes him up and delivers everyone to Hex Mambo. The Gilded Gladiators just group too much. Cozyx finds a disaster level ultimate. Johnny distracts. Rapio does infinite damage, and the Gilded Gladiators had no way to fight back in. That is the most depressing chart I think I have ever seen. The SPL representatives, they had it all. 2 games in a row now where they have dominated the early game, and then these one small mistake starts to build up, and Hex Mambo fight themselves back in. This might as well be an even match. Map state still separated. It means the Gilded Gladiators have some structures they can hide behind, but considering desync death on Awesome Jake and Fire Giant on the mend, Hex Mambo have got advantage here.
Hex Mambo able to slow down the momentum. I think that's the important part now for this Mambo team, as Gladiators had everything going for them, and they take one step too far forward. Cozyx finally gets that Dharmic Pillar he's been waiting for.
And he's been waiting.
Turns the tides. 23 minutes in the game. Now we start pushing towards Fire Giant. Hex Mambo already with the group up, and Johnny waiting in mid, waiting for an opportunity to pick off one of the Gilded Gladiators, maybe just go for the objective if given the time to do so. This is a significant grouping by Hex Mambo to try and start up this objective. The Gilded Gladiators just waiting by for the time being. Hex Mambo throws some wards out to get some coverage. Not going to go for the objective just yet.
Yeah, Mambo don't have any easy way to just tank up the Fire Giant. Julio's got the ability to be tanky, but no resustain on the team means any damage the Fire Giant does will stick. And the Gilded Gladiators still nursing a small gold lead. 3,025 minutes in doesn't mean nearly as much as what we were approaching around that 10,000 mark just a moment ago. Keep your eyes on Johnny. He's got the flank on this fight.
Titans are out. Jake charges up the ultimate, lets it rip through 3, but doesn't find the damage. Spudio launches out the swords, and it's going to get a lot, but Johnny to the back line, pushed against the wall immediately, but gets the bat out of hell with the help of Rapio. 1 for Hex Mambo. Johnny, half HP, stunned on landing. Kyrmi trying to turn it around, but he gets the Bloodforge proc to stay alive. He stays in the pool, but it's just not enough. Low health bars on Mambo. Jake still healthy. Kana still fighting back. It's 2 for Kyrmi and 1 for Awesome Jake. It's all going south now for Hex Mambo, but Spudio will stand his ground It's a 3-for-2 trade out, but Kyrmi once more, but
Be
Kyrmi
real.
may have made a mistake. Don't dive in versus 2.
Kana.
Wait for Kana to jump back into the fray. Rapio, he's got nowhere to go, accepts his death, but he gets the alternate timeline. Is that enough to keep him alive? Kyrmi gets 3 in the fight, and Rapio will not get enough. It's 4 for Kyrmi, nearly the quad they were looking for, but it's the Gladiators on top of the fight.
Hex Mambo nearly went out on the entirety of the match off a reset of Bloodforge. Johnny gets so much done in the back. Rapio isolated. It's the two-man core, mid and jungle, between Tier 1 and Tier 2. Spudio healthy, but too far to follow up, and the Gilded Gladiators collapse back and then move themselves back forward to chase out the engagement. Crazy, crazy stuff. But because the fight is so close, neither side is exactly in a position to just pull the Fire Giant. And Kyrmi's desynced death, synced up with Rapio's respawn timer, means that Hex Mambo should be able to regroup and stop this Fire Giant immediately.
Hex Mambo on the way. The Fire Giant started up already by Gilded Gladiators as Johnny's starting to wrap around the backside of this fight. Try to see if they can get into the fire, but it's already half HP. The Hex Mambo are biding their
Coin
time
toss?
before they can go in. Ultimate
Commit.
pop by Jake. See if they can take this Fire Giant away with this Gladiators who do get the fire. Can they get out of the fight, or will they even just keep this one going? Kana and Jake charging forward. Hex Mambo now on the run from the Gilded Gladiators, but they've been spotted out. They've been caught out. Kana is still pushing forward. Julio already at half HP, but Johnny's always waiting in the wings. You gotta keep eyes on the bat.
Thought we'd see Hex Mambo go for disruption as opposed to steal. Instead, waits till that Fire Giant dropped incredibly low. Now the Gilded Gladiators, the Fire Giant on all 5, can try once more to break the base. This time with more time to play with. Means they can slow play it on the Phoenixes, but difference is, last time we saw the Gilded Gladiators grouped up with Fire Giant, they had about an entire item on every individual member as opposed to Hex Mambo, whereas now Hex Mambo, they're starting to finish up their 6 items. They've already upgraded all those starters. Relics are starting to get upgraded as well. It was already difficult to siege previously, and it still is now. Johnny, of course, has very heavy 1v1 potential. So often it's the 4-1 split, but I don't see Kyrmi fishing for that fight right now. Kyrmi's been so important to disrupt the backline dive of Hex Mambo. Jake's got plenty of cooldown, I suppose.
Yes.
Just going to clear out that camp, see if he catches someone else out there. 60 seconds, though? I mean, that's actually a fair amount of time.
Pretty good cooldown for awesome Jake. Threw it out, maybe thinking somebody would sneak up to the Pyromancer from Hex Mambo. Throws it right above it. I think mostly just help him clear out the camp over anything else, but not expecting a fight for his team to break out. But you know how late we are in the game, still a couple minutes to play with this Fire Giant buff. Gilded Gladiators are really taking a slow time to try and group up towards these lanes, but maybe that's just a product of how far back the minions have been pushed by Hex Mambo. That split pushing by Spudio earlier kept those minions so far out on the left-hand side that without Enhanced Fire Giant, it's a lot tougher for the Gladiators to make one of those pushes without the wave.
So much of this time already eaten up. Only 2 minutes left on the Fire Giant power play. Probably another 20 or 30 seconds until we see them move in towards the Phoenixes proper. Hex Mambo, content. Where are the enemies? Where's the threat? There is none. Left side. Now starting to move over towards Hex Mambo's side of the map. We'll see how that defense starts to line itself up. Julio and Johnny acting in mid. Rest of the team hovering the left-hand side. Jake in the jungle can join either side of the fight should one break out. This is where the Gilded Gladiators struggled last time, actually dealing damage to these Phoenixes. So much space control, so much poke potential from Rapio and Cozyx. It makes it really difficult for the Gilded Gladiators to move themselves forward. And we saw what happened if they make a misplay. If 2 people get caught out by that cage, Cozyx just does so much damage already.
Waves pushing up in both lanes. Kyrmi's in danger. The Gladiators need to try and bail their jungler out. Kana's able to make sure he is alive. Kyrmi's still going forward. Decides to finally back away off the tree. Took a bit too much poke. But look at the left side of the map too. The Gladiators are losing out on all fronts here. Kana down to half HP. Does have teleport. So it won't be entirely true damage towards himself. But he rotates back over with the rest of the team. He's not going to reset himself yet.
Johnny doesn't have beads or blink here, but he does have damage and ultimate available. Jangaru spotted, needs to play safe here. Should have seen Johnny. He's in no man's land.
Johnny's missed everything. Let's take a listen with the Gilded Gladiators. They maybe try and bail themselves out of this team fight.
I'm on Ishtar. I'm looking at Ishtar.
Fuck, I fucked it. I'm playing with you, Hachi.
I'm building killer.
Maybe Ganesh? Raijin dash on me. I die here, but I
Killer. I'm on Raijin.
Playing Snoopy, playing Snoopy. You guys are in the game here. They're coming from
Yeah,
behind.
I'm looking at Raijin. I've gotten soon. Silence?
They're in range, they're in range.
He's a dash over the wall.
Does he have a... Fuck.
Oh.
We're splitting, boys.
Yeah, they're split now.
That was Ishtar,
Red.
both relics for fire. This one's EFG.
Oh, it started out so well for the Gladiators, but then right at the end, as soon as Johnny steps back in, it's all going downhill. Kana's doing his best to fight in the 3v1. He's holding his own for the time, but there's not enough sustain on that Arthur and not enough defense. Rapio, Johnny, the carries for Hex Mambo, keeping things alive.
I've seen it twice now, J-Mac. The Gilded Gladiators can't go for the split engagement. Johnny just decimates the 1v1, 2v2 even, with the help of Julio up against Kana in the center of the map. There has to be a concerted 5-man effort. Jangaru cannot be isolated in the backline like that. Avoids Johnny to escape straight towards Julio, who is already in the Tiger transformation. There just needs to be an answer to that dive. Maybe you could play the poke game. If the Gilded Gladiators are given another opportunity to start their siege, group up as 5, play the poke game with Jangaru, see if you can maybe knock down some of the squishier targets. Any damage that connects with Spudio would just be phenomenal. But you heard it from the Gilded Gladiators themselves. This EFG heavily favored now to Hex Mambo.
And you heard it as well from Kyrmi during that fight is, boys, we're splitting. We're splitting too much. They split at the start of the fight. They split at the end of the fight. And now as we push towards Enhanced Fire Giant, it's Hex Mambo. Still 3K down, but all the momentum in their favor. Teleport used by Kana, so not going to be there for the team fight after. Almost 2 minutes of a cooldown. We have to wait for this King Arthur. Hex Mambo starting up their grouping. It's a runic bomb on both sides. No guaranteed secure for either team just yet. But it might not even be around fire. It might even be a fight around mid lane that the two teams decide to take.
Wow.
As Rapio dashes away, but he's able to put significant damage to Kana already.
I mean, that's big knowledge there that Kana is no longer the tanky menace that you might think he is. If you can lock him down, Rapio can melt him. Jake, too far forward. A lot of damage going his way.
Hex Mambo goes in. Let's take a listen with Mambo as they try and close this out.
I'm ready to go. I go rat dash.
Ulting rat.
Run. Oh, that's one. Oh, maybe. Archie's one.
I can link in one.
Chase. Tank. I can go in one.
Yes. I'm tanking. Nice.
Careful, Rat's gonna come back now.
Yeah, watch out. Reset.
Get Phoenix.
Get Phoenix. I'm backing. Going.
Hex Mambo find 2 picks in the team fight, take down the tier 2, and now a Phoenix alongside it. Hex Mambo, again, they may have been down in gold, but we're at the point of the game where 2,000 is a nothing sum at this point. We'll have to see if Gladiators can even fight at this next fire.
What I'm hearing is a massive communication difference as well. We listen into the Gilded Gladiators, Kyrmi saying, guys, we could fight here. Guys, they're behind us. Guys, we're split. It's all Kyrmi. I hear Hex Mambo. I can't differentiate their voices. They're all feeding in phenomenal information. Tank the tower. I've got dash in 2. Let's get aggressive. Get the Phoenix, reset, go fire. And now they're calling the fight.
Julio's going to stun out Kana. They're going to try and kill Julio on the side of the Gladiators, but Julio has that second life. He jumps up on the cloud. They're chasing out the decoy. He disrupts the backline again. Johnny gets spotted out, though. Jumps over the tide away from Awesome Jake. And now in the 2v3, they join in with Cozyx's ultimate, which has just caused so many problems for the Gilded Gladiators time and time throughout this game. Another pick for Hex Mambo.
If Kyrmi connects that dart, that's Julio's life. Unfortunate for the Gilded Gladiators jungler as Hex Mambo pull Fire Giant once more. Julio's low. Doesn't have teleport. If he resets, has to walk back to the Fire Giant pit all on his own. 4-man core of the Gilded Gladiators still hovering nearby on defense. Hex Mambo not liking their odds just yet. Have got time to play. It is worth noting that Kana's teleport is available, so 30 seconds on respawn is the entirety of the time it's going to take him to get to the Fire Giant pit. Will likely be able to TP in off rip. So Hex Mambo got to play fast if they want the Fire Giant off of this advantage. Seems to me they want to get rid of the vision first. 2 sentries in pocket. Julio and Johnny holding them. Elixir of Power popped as well. Hex Mambo, a lot of damage to play with.
Fire Giant started by Hex Mambo. Jake near. Ultimate almost back up off a cooldown.
Kana's
Nearly everybody's ults. But Kana's up in 1. Jake lets the ultimate fire to the Fire Giant. See if he can take it away. He cannot. Hex Mambo secure the objective as Cozyx throws out the Dharmic Pillar and Johnny dives in. But it's Kyrmi and Kana to the backline. Have Hex Mambo even noticed? Johnny and Julio dive on a Kyrmi and they take out the jungler. Now it's Kana in the middle of 5, and that is no man's land for the solo laner. Spudio with 1, and Julio and
Jake.
Johnny team up to take down Jake. 3 dead on the Gladiators and make it 4 as Rapio Rapio picks up the double, and it's only Jangaru left alive to defend.
The EU SCC on a warpath. Julio stops the back. Jangaru, so much work cut out for him. The base already broken. Hex Mambo, they're not healthy, but they're going for it.
They're going to walk in. Jangaru, no ultimate. He's got to do it with the cooldowns he has. Beads and Aegis, both available. Full health Titan, 1 versus 5. Jangaru starting to poke out the tanks, but he needs all of his cooldowns to kill these carries, to kill these frontliners. Johnny jumps it over and nearly kills them all on his own. Rampage for Johnny, and the EUSCC strike once more.
It just felt inevitable, didn't it? Eventually, we reached a point where Johnny's winning the 1v1s, where this Camazotz was just a massive threat, and there was never an answer to it. Anytime Johnny showed up in a team fight, I mean, you said it, I said it, that's raps. If Johnny's there, it's just going to work for him. Early game, the answer was Dragonflight, Acorn Blast, we kill him. Late game, it's, oh man, he's got 2 sustain items. His ultimate's always available because of all the CDR he's stacked up. No one else can really lock him down. We're split on every single one of these engagements. And Hex Mambo have always been a team to punish mistakes. They do it again.
And they're a team that, even though they play a much more aggressive early than a lot of other EUSCC teams have, they've still got a late game. They can still team fight. They're a team that will fight you at 20% health because they have that much confidence in each other to be able to stay alive during those.
And the communication that we heard from that team, I mean, that was just beautiful calling. Tank the tower, someone get into the Phoenix, my dash is coming up. Every bit of relevant information, when the CC's happening, when the damage is happening, was communicated properly, and it wasn't cluttered at all. I mean, it was all clear and concise.
Yeah, it was much easier here for Hex Mambo to try and find their winning game number 2. It took them a little while to get there. They were able to clean this one up and take a 2-0 over the Gilded Gladiators. Another win for the EUSCC. That's it for me and Myth here on the cast. We'll throw back over to the desk to break down game 2.
Well, the EUSCC is 4-0 on the day, and Hex Mambo, you know, if I could, I would really just synopsize this game with a screen cap. Yeah. Synopsize.
Okay,
You
sorry.
Google it. You got a laptop.
You're right, I do.
Yeah, it would just be the screen cap of about, what, 23, 24 minutes in, where you get to see the graph that is so high for the Gladiators plummet on that siege around the Phoenix line. And then not only that, the fights, it really did feel like it, a little bit of an overextension from Hex Mambo, but that one defense, it feels like undid the Gladiators from.
To give a brief summary, and I think a brief summary of this one might be the 4-0 stat line of the EUSCC. It might be the vibe check that we heard in the comms. Mifflin commented on it, and I think that might be the thread to pull on, because we listened into the Gilded Gladiators, and there was a lot of silence. Now, granted, it was a losing fight for them, right? They didn't end up winning when we listened into them. That's classic Gaster's curse from us. But the difference in comms and energy coming from the booth when we listen to Hex Mambo versus the Gilded Gladiators, I mean, the momentum that they're feeling from game number 1, the confidence that they had in their scaling, I mean, they didn't rush to it at all. They fell behind in the early game. And then 2 times, 3 times in a row even, they defend on these fantastic fights, the siege defenses, and it just feels like everybody is in the right place, and the Gilded Gladiators start to misstep a little bit. You get those opportunities to punish if you're Hex Mambo, and we get to the late game, that's their bread and butter, and you start to see how impactful Johnny can be, even on a pick that I wasn't expecting him to pull out. I never thought he would play the Camazotz today, but he played the Camazotz. He looked brilliant on it. Hex Mambo, I think, firing on all cylinders.
There were so many moments, and I think I have to give a special shout out to the Elephant, because I feel like there were a lot of fights where it was starting to look good for Hex Mambo, and then a Dharmic Pillar emphatically made it good for Hex Mambo. You get that 10-3 and 11, 43, almost 44,000 damage from Rapio in mid. It does feel like everybody got something done. And even the less glamorous slash lines, right? If you look like 2-4 and then 14 assists for Spudio, right? Maybe not the forefront of killers, but absolutely put their name on the board. 1-1-17 for Julio, and then of course the 18 assists there.
No kills for Ganesha though. I mean, that's kind of rough.
That's a little rough.
Yeah.
You've got a good point there. No, they just look fantastic. And again, it is after like 20 minutes of, I'm not going to call it suffering, but kind of suffering, right? Like they were winning fights, but the gold wasn't going their way, and then suddenly they weren't winning as many fights, and they were having to fall back. map state didn't feel like it favored them for too long, and all it took was one really good defense, and suddenly they're right back in the game, right back where they want to be,
right.
And playing in a way that we've kind of gotten used to seeing Hex Mambo play. Even when they're down, they are not out, and that game showed it. They take that one 2-0. And of course, I'm sure they're feeling ecstatic about it. In fact, to find out for sure, we've got Rapio standing by.
That's right. I've got Rapio, the mid laner for Hex Mambo here. Rapio, I kind of want to start things off by, you're not traditionally a mid lane player competitively. You've been jungle more than anything else. What's it been like making that transition from the jungle role over to the mid role with this team?
I'll be honest, I've kind of entered our scrims 0-10 every game because I just kind of have that jungle mentality of just dashing in. Trying to tone it down as much as I can, but it's just fun. I'm just playing ranked, really.
And what's it like playing with this Hex Mambo team? They've always kind of been the powerhouse ever since the name establishment has come out with Hex Mambo. You look back to Masters last year; it's the team to beat for just about everybody, and really over the course of these last couple of years. So, what's it like getting to kind of squad with some of these players?
It's a lot easier playing with Johnny than against him. That's the main thing I can say about playing with.
Yeah, I think that's what just about everybody's saying. If you can play with Johnny, it makes your life a whole lot easier. And kind of talking about you two in this set, dominant performance by you guys in the first game. Come back and it's a little bit closer here in this game. Gilded Gladiators have a pretty big lead, and you guys get that pick in that big team fight in mid that really kind of pushed things back. What were the comms like during a call like that on that kind of Phoenix defense?
We was always saying like they don't really have the best team, so, like comp wise. So we knew if they push too deep, we can just chase them out. And then it just, as soon as we got one bit of damage off, it just all go because we knew like it was in the bag already. So.
You guys look great. Congratulations on your tour, Rapio. I'll let you get back with the team. Thanks so much for the interview. Go back to the desk.
Well, they get the win, and they do it with the knowledge that they had, right? Just wait for them to overextend a little bit, get a little bit of damage, and then go all in. And it works out not only well for them, but well for EU SCC in general today. Not just Hex Mambo, but the Scarabs finding their wins. We can take a look at the bracket to see how things are going to shake out. 3 of the first matchups played today. Scarabs, as just mentioned, took down the Kings earlier. For those wondering, Hounds and Wardens, they're going to be playing first thing tomorrow morning. Right after we deal with match 4, the Hounds-Wardens matchup, we will be jumping, I believe, over to Group A. They'll play their elimination game. Kings will play the loser of Hounds-Wardens. And so now we actually know a little bit more because we have the 2 matchups from Group A figured out. So we know where everybody's going to be tomorrow. The Ravens will be taking on Hex Mambo. That's not going to be tomorrow. That's going to be starting on Saturday. Best of 5. Winner of that match will go to the SMITE World Championship. Tomorrow, we will be tackling the Storm and the Gladiators. Loser of that is out, is done, is gone. So Gladiators and Storm maybe feeling a little bit of pressure. Gladiators, especially after today, trying to get a good bounce back. Storm, I mean, we talked about it. 5th, 6th seed coming out of the NASCC, both for them and the Wardens. For most of them, they just said, we're happy to just be here at this point, but the opportunity still exists. Winner of that one will play the loser of match 7. And that will determine, again, another one to go to Worlds. But we are getting a little bit closer. We've figured out some of this. Tomorrow we'll finalize the, second, third of the brackets. And then we'll start to move ourselves forward towards those qualification games. And it's already getting spicy.
Yeah, it doesn't get any easier as the weekend goes on. It gets, if anything, much harder, right? I mean, we're going to be putting teams back up against the wall, win or go home, as soon as tomorrow, right?
Yeah.
And then throughout the rest of the weekend, I mean, the stakes only get higher. Teams got a chance to say, try out the metas, see what this patch felt like. We saw EU SCC come out dominant, right? But, I mean, everybody has got to be bringing their best for the rest of the weekend because the stakes only get higher.
Yeah, the heat in the kitchen's turned up, and if you can't handle it, you're going to get knocked out. It's going to be fun to watch, and hopefully you'll be with us throughout the entire time. We're going to be back again tomorrow at 11 to continue on the SWC qualifiers. From myself, from Frog, all of the other casters, everyone back in production, thank you so much for tuning in, and we'll see you tomorrow as we keep going.